last 2 weeks.
Oh,
I got a jacket this year, I think. I like to see it.
I don't know.
I think
It's
so.
not
Yeah.
I think so.
One of
See
them
how
we've
it
been
goes.
talking about Florida.
I'll just try and keep
The,
us on
no,
track.
it's an actual
Later.
like
Sounds perfect.
Mhm.
We actually have
So I got,
Fleece
I got
inside.
cut off last.
We've actually had
regular
Yeah,
code
your
and
knees
inside.
are still there.
Thanks.
one of those
No,
Lands
I-
End.
I'm talking about
Lands End does, I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Nice jacket.
good. I'm glad it's done. That Aaron's only been involved in it, me.
Yeah, it's just now, I'd be like, yep, that's,
Yeah.
I know everything, I know all about it.
Hey, Chris.
How are you, Brett?
Great.
Oh, Christian, a pack of gummy bugs from 7-Eleven,
For
which
what?
I failed to deliver on. I was
There's
intending to
interest
bring them
accruing.
tonight. There is interest accruing. We had a full conversation
What
about
did,
it.
what did he do?
What are the
What did
interest
he do
rates
to
for that?
deserve that?
About 150%.
I honestly don't even remember now. I had planned to bring them for the meeting tonight because I thought he's gonna want a
And
snack.
that's not even an annual.
And then I was in a hurry to get back and I forgot to grab them. Dang it. Yeah, it's accruing fast now. I'm gonna owe 2 bags tomorrow. I went to the store the other day and they didn't have it.
I meant to actually draft up an
A little
invoice.
contract or an invoice.
But I didn't have time.
I'll send you back that bead.
That is my least favorite commercial. Any commercial. It's that gummy one where they all talk like babies.
Oh, that's so weird.
It just bothers me.
It does too. Me too.
It just does. It's like,
That's why.
rubs me, it just rubs me wrong.
Hey, baby talk. Talk to my kids that way when they're babies.
Exactly.
I don't think I do.
Get that, but-
Incidents aside.
like timing you.
My name is Sean Murphy, and I'm Mayor Pro Tem, and I'd like to call this meeting of September 24th, 2024 to order. This is the meeting for the Board of Trustees for the town of Berthoud, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you could stand with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Let's start it off with the roll call. Clerk Samora.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy,
Here.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Trustee Albrecht,
Here.
Trustee Wing,
Here.
Trustee Ayers,
Here.
Trustee Kurtz.
Present.
Mayor Karspeck will be absent this evening.
All right, we'll roll right on into citizen participation. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Virtual participants can speak by raising their hand in your Zoom meeting controls or sending a chat message to indicate that you'd like to speak. Telephone callers can press 9 to indicate whether they'd like to speak or not. Looks like we've got 2 in person. If you'd like to step up to the mic and say your name and address for the clerk, would Richard Rupp please approach?
Good evening, everyone. Richard Rupp, 534 Fifth Street, obviously Berthoud. I'm here tonight to talk about connecting the dots. And the first thing I want to do is say something really positive. Well, it's all going to be positive. But the Splash Park, 5 stars, right? Rec Center, 5 stars. Bike Park, 5 stars. 5. You guys have set the bar right up here, okay? Now, anyone that maybe knows me, I'm big on trails. Like, I've come up to you before talking about trails. I'm out there, I'm on the trails. Trails are probably the most important thing that I can think of. Eventually, I hate to say this, rec centers are gonna get bulldozed way out in the future, but a well-established trail is here for hundreds and hundreds of years. So I'm very pro-trail. Unfortunately, my rating for trails is maybe 2 stars as it stands today. I'm really energized with the survey results to basically say that the trails are up here with the 5-star stuff, okay? So I got 2 requests for the trustees. And the first one, the first request is to, over and above what CDOT does, over and above what the developers do, I'm asking for some serious funding for linear miles of trails. I mean, if we spend $50 million on this, $51 million on trails. It's a top tier item. And it's not just me, your constituents, I think, are basically saying that. The second request that I have is, this is an easy one, low cost, whatever. Let's fix the maps that are out there right now. I follow the maps, they're not quite accurate, okay? The first one is, if you look at the master trail thing, it says, you know, word for word, below here are the regional, or I'm sorry, here are the neighborhood trails. This does not include sidewalks and on and on. It's in the documentation. But when you look at the map, the longest stretch of neighborhood trails that we have is sidewalks. I biked it. I biked over 50 driveways. That is not a trail. There's not enough glitter to make this thing a trail. So my request is, let's be honest with ourselves. Let's get it off the map. I don't want to put the toothpaste back in the tube and say, how did this happen? Da 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 da. And you know, I'm talking about Huron Lakes for the most part. 2018, Mr. Birdsall came up here, told us about all these trails. Excuse me, on and on and on. They're sidewalks. So let's just be honest. Let's move forward. Let's scrub the map. The last thing I have to say is the most positive thing, and I'm going to go total spinal tap on you guys here. 6 stars, Bustang. If anyone here had anything to do with the Bustang stop up at the highway, do a victory lap. I swear. My kid started work Denver and has been taking it. It is wonderful. It's fantastic. I took it yesterday. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rupp. Mr. Brian Locke, you,
That's a hard act to follow. Brian Locke, 706 7th Street, right here in Berthoud, Colorado. First, kind of like to apologize. Last time I was here, I didn't deliver my message very well about the sidewalks and stuff. So thanks for your patience with me getting all like a Ken or a Karen or whatever. And then I gotta say, Rick Rupp has some really good points, and I'm reading the document that is the Master Trail Comprehensive Plan from 2022, I believe. And it says, on the opening page, the primary responsibility for leadership will be the town of Berthoud. And this is all concerning parks and trails. Well, that's pretty obvious. And I think we have done such an amazing job with the rec center and the splash park and all of these other things, the pump track, that based on that survey where trails are at the top, I think it is time for, as our document says, for leadership from the town of Berthoud to maybe change directions. Well, I know there was talk about like a $50 million baseball field and stuff, but anyways. And then in this same, it's a great document. It's right on the town website, which is really clunky and hard to navigate, but it is there and you can find it. And, and another, just working with Heron Lakes developer, complete permanent paved front range trail connection from Heron Lakes Parkway to County Road 10E. And it says midterm temporary trail to be completed 2022. So there is a lot of work to be done on trails. I hope that everyone takes to heart what the citizens said in the survey. We have gotten a lot of really nice A grade, including the adaptive park. Like it's time to switch gears a little. And then just to try and close on a positive note, unlike the last time I was here. Hayes Market, I bought my cat food there today. They asked me if I wanted a roundup. Many times I don't, because it's like, oh, who's getting this money? Like, is it really going to the people that are, but Hayes Market, roundup, it's going to the schools, and Hayes Market is matching whatever you round up.
Cool.
So big shout out to Hayes Market.
thank you, appreciate that.
Seconds to spare.
No. Do we have any other audience members that would like to speak to any non-agenda items? Clerk Samara, do we have any virtual participants?
Okay, Murphy, we do have one.
All right, proceed.
Hello, I'm Kelly Seaton. My address is 820 Berthoud Peak Drive. And I just want to take a moment to express my gratitude to a couple dedicated individuals who made a big difference last week at Berthoud Elementary. First, a real heartfelt thank you to Sean Murphy for stepping up and passing his crossing guard exam with the Thompson School District and coming to help every day last week at our drop-off and pickup. Made an incredible difference to the traffic impacts due to the detour at Mountain Avenue last week. Your commitment and safety, the well-being of our children has not gone unnoticed, and we deeply appreciate your efforts. I just want to extend my thanks also to the Larimer County Sheriff's Office, Berthoud Division, for their added support during the time. Their presence provided an extra layer of security and reassurance for our families, as well as a little bit of income due to tickets passed out during the week. So I just wanted to say thanks again and for listening to my citizen concern last week, and it was truly responded to so well by all of the town staff as well as the Sheriff's Department, and wanted to say thank you on behalf of myself as a parent and a volunteer at Berthoud Elementary.
Thank you, Mrs. Seaton. Do we have any other online participants?
We do not.
All right. Well, then I will close citizen participation and we will move on to our regularly scheduled items. We'll start that with consent agenda. As for the board, are there any items you'd like to pull in particular from the consent?
I would. With the talking trails, can we maybe pull E and maybe broadcast that out and put a little spotlight on it?
Yeah,
I'd also like to remove F, please.
any other additional items we'd like to
I
pull?
don't need to pull C, but maybe you could educate me a little bit. I thought the report, board report was so well done. I just thought it was excellent. And as I looked through it and all the work that was put behind it, the pictures and all the commentary, is there a point in time where those folks come in front of us live? Because I actually would think they'd like to talk about all this stuff. So I don't think we need to pull off a consent item, but I just, I'm curious about that.
Not historically, other than in the context of other items that you're taking action on, but those are certainly things we could do.
I would, yeah, there's so much work that's been done and so many good things that I'd like to connect the face with all the work that's being done and have them have an opportunity to talk about what they do. If
Yeah.
That would be okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I personally would like to pull item G as well, so we're looking at E, F, and G. Could we have somebody make a motion on that? Moving consent forward minus those items.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by trustee Kurtz and seconded by trustee Wing. We have a roll call vote.
Trustee Wing,
Yes.
trustee Hardy,
Yes.
trustee Ayers,
Yes.
trustee Albrecht, trustee Kurtz,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy.
Yes. Consent passes minus items E, F, and G. Can we tackle item E first, which would be the North Berthoud Parkway Trail Gap bid award? You have questions?
Don't really have questions. I just wanted to kind of bring it to the spotlight since we're talking about trails, and I figured it'd be kind of a good opportunity to kind of show what kind of money we're throwing at trails on this next project, and maybe get a little more detail and just kind of have it more public for those that don't have the documentation.
Yeah, so the North Berthoud Parkway Trail Gap project has been in the works for a couple of years. It's partially grant funded through a grant we received from the North Front Range Metropolitan Planning Organization. It took a little bit to get through the grant processes and environmental reviews, but we're excited that project's moving forward. That will construct a button-activated pedestrian crossing signal, not the RRFBs, the rapid rectangular flashing beacons that you're accustomed to seeing in town, like in front of Hayes, but this will actually be like a signal arm that will hang out over the road as a button-activated flasher, so that's really hyper visible on Berthoud Parkway. Right there at Water Avenue, which is kind of right immediately across from Loveland Lake, and then it'll cross the road from east to west, and then the trail will go up the west side of Berthoud Parkway, heading north to Tenney and connect to the existing trail on Tenney, on the north side of Tenney, that then goes across the bridge. And someday we'll connect around potentially to some open space south of Heron Lakes and to the Front Range Trail that will eventually connect down through Heron Lakes to County Road Tenney. So that's a $660,000 project that we're investing in this year.
Any other discussion or questions?
Well, I didn't know if we wanted to talk about anything that was brought up in the public comment with this highlighted trails.
Sure.
But yeah, just really that, are we showing sidewalks as trails on maps?
So the trail, I think that the trail that Mr. Rupp is referencing is on Heron Lake, is in Heron Lakes.
Okay.
I would call it a sidewalk also. I'm not
Sure.
gonna be disingenuous about that.
Yeah.
It is a 10-foot wide sidewalk.
Okay.
And so in the context of our Trails Master Plan, and I think in the original approvals, it was identified as a trail.
Mhm.
To me, that's a sidewalk, but I get it. It's,
Yeah, okay.
It's not a 10-foot sidewalk.
it may
Excuse
be, maybe
me,
it's
it-
8,
I think
sorry.
It's not a 10-foot
It is
sidewalk.
eight.
Maybe it's 8, I don't know, sorry. So
It
maybe it's
goes-
8. It's a sidewalk.
Goes across my driveway.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we
You shovel it, you know how big it is.
I plow it.
I mean, as we get into the trails discussion because of the survey, I think it's just something to maybe think about is
We
updating.
we don't
updating
count
that.
trails, or we don't
Yeah.
count sidewalks as trails in our current development plans.
Yeah.
Those are older plans from years ago, but, you know, in general, we would expect trails to be separated from the roadway.
Yeah,
Except those that might exist along collector roads like Berthoud Parkway, you know, or other kind of higher trafficked roads where you're not crossing driveways. Spartan Avenue might be a good example. That, we don't have any trails along Spartan Avenue, but that's the kind of road where you might not have a lot of driveways, and so maybe there's a reason to put a trail there.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, to me, those are just big sidewalks.
yeah. Yeah, I guess maybe my soft suggestion is when it makes sense is if there is a high density of, if we're showing a trail on a map and an active citizen, it's like, I'm gonna go bike that, and it's a lot of high density driveways, maybe we update the map, remove that.
Yeah,
so
we can
that-
take it off the map, that's fine.
Yeah, just so that people aren't getting excited about an awesome trail that
Sure.
is a bunch of driveways.
That's really just a big sidewalk, yeah.
Yeah.
I will tell you, it gets a ton of use.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that walk on it. I would assume that there are some people that ride bikes
Yeah.
on it periodically,
Yeah,
but
that's
it's not a
true.
biking trail. It's certainly well suited for walking.
Yeah.
You're just walking along in front yards.
Thank you. Well, do we have a motion to pass item E separately, or
Make the
would
motion.
we like to continue?
Let's just do collaborative.
Okay.
Yeah, G.
Let's go to item F, which would be the resolution supporting the Thompson School District bond and special levy measure.
Yep, I just wanted to make a brief comment on that. I'm really grateful that, through the presentations, we've seen how much attention Berthoud schools are gonna get, that are much needed, and, it's very, past due, I think, on some of these projects, so I'm very grateful for that. I do wanna bring up my concern about supporting this bond. One, because of the economic timing of it, and two, because I feel like, in general, parents feel that Berthoud is not well represented on the Thompson School Board, and struggle finding a voice. And so when we're talking about $200+ million of taxes, I do want to encourage the community to hold their board accountable, both us and the school board, for where those funds go and how they're used. Berthoud still has never received a competition pool like the other schools in the school district, and there's other things that it seems they have fallen off when we've requested them, and it was only 8 years ago that we approved an over $100 million bond for Thompson School District, and there was a lot of Berthoud parents that made that possible, I believe, and so I just want to draw some attention to, when we talk about supporting something of this size, that we need to hold our representatives accountable and make sure that Berthoud is being more well represented in that boardroom. And that's all I have for that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Questions?
Maybe just to add a little color, I think the statistic was that Berthoud schools would represent about 30% of that bond, just as a, is that right? So that is, I think, hitting a little above our weight, which is
Yeah.
a good thing for this road bond, so.
But we have one representative from Berthoud
On the school
on the
board.
board, I think
Sure.
is kind of where I'm leaning to.
I see, okay.
No, I would agree with that, Trustee Albrecht. My personal reasoning for bringing this item to our attention is just seeing the development that we've got going on in this community, some of it out of our control. I strongly feel that this is the best measure we can take to deal with kind of the growth we're dealing with right now, and supporting the school board and their actions with this bond and special levy. Just looking at some of the numbers, which is kind of critical to me, along with, accountability should these things go forward. We're looking at close to $24 million in investment in Berthoud Elementary, which is at 83% capacity. You've got $26.5 million at maybe Stockwell, which is at 94% capacity right now. Another $23.6 million at Turner, which is at 70% capacity right now. And at Berthoud High School, which wasn't brought up, I don't believe, at our presentation, another $4.76 million, which is mainly diverted towards maintenance and education from their preliminary estimates. with both these measures supporting career education after school that doesn't require college, safety and security, getting the AC upgraded on our schools, and then just explicitly accommodating that 250 new seats in our end of the district, I think is really critical in the next 6 years to get right. I wish there were another way to do this, but I feel strongly the school board has taken the right action on this. And I would like if our community and our board could show support for this. So I'm very supportive of this. Do we have any other questions or comments? Okay.
No.
Let's move on to item G, which would be proclamation for Stan Kaufman and honoring his service. And I'd like to go ahead and read this. I won't be able to sign this currently because we're updating that. And Mayor Karsbeck is not in attendance, but I'd like to go ahead and read this proclamation for the community right now, honoring Stan Kaufman. Whereas Stan Kaufman devoted 37 years of his life to supporting athletic achievements and the overall well-being of thousands of young adults in our community, and whereas beginning in 1986, Stan dedicated his career to serving the Berthoud community at Turner Middle School and Berthoud High School until his retirement from teaching in 2016, and whereas after retiring from teaching in 2016, Stan continued serving as Turner's athletic director for an additional 4 years until 2020. And whereas over Stan's 3 decades in Berthoud, his contributions extended far beyond the classroom as he coached football, baseball, track, and boys and girls basketball at both Turner and Berthoud High School. And whereas throughout the years, Stan generously and consistently contributed to the Turner community by helping facilitate dances, the annual Bob Turner Classic 5K race, and the Stan Kaufman Co-Ed Relay, which raised over $3,000 annually for 6 years. All these things to be to the benefit of Turner Athletics, and whereas Stan pushed students to reach their highest potential with his unique combination of toughness, compassion, and tireless effort, while encouraging discipline, focus, and preparedness in all. And now, therefore, I, Sean Murphy, as the Mayor Pro Tem of Town of Berthoud, encourage residents of the Town of Berthoud to honor the life and legacy of Stan Kaufman. In your recognition of a lifetime of countless contributions to the Berthoud community and the Berthoud's youth as a beloved teacher, athletic director, and coach, through newly dedicated Stan Kaufman Athletic Complex, Stan's legacy will live on for generations to come. And I will sign this as of today. Do we have any representatives for this proclamation here in attendance tonight? Okay. Thank you. Moving forward on items E, F, and G, whether we'd like to combine motion or separate motions, I'm willing to entertain that now.
I'll move to approve consent agenda item E, F, and G as a combined motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. That motion was made by Trustee Kurtz and seconded by Trustee Hardy. If we could do a roll call.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Trustee Wing,
Yes.
Trustee Kurtz,
Yes.
Trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy.
Yes. Thank you. All right, moving on to our next agenda item. We'll be looking at appointments to the volunteer committees. If we could have the interviewers speak up about those that we'd like to discuss appointments for. Maybe we'll start with historic preservation and the folks that sat in on those interviews first.
There we go. Historic preservation, we have 3 seats available. We did 1 interview last night. And we're gonna do a continuance because since we have 3 seats available and some more applicants that have come in, we're gonna interview all the applicants and then make a decision out of the larger pool for the 3 seats. Come our October 2nd meeting, we'll make that announcement.
October 22nd.
22nd. seats hopefully filled.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Yeah. And we'll move on to those that sat in on the planning commission interviews.
I can,
Who's that?
yeah, that was myself and Mayor Karspeck, so I
Okay.
can talk a little bit about
Trustee
that.
Kurtz?
So we had two applicants for two open positions on the planning commission, and I guess I'll talk about the first applicant, or the first interviewee was Stacy Sigmund, and she has a lot of experience, I guess, as being kind of on the staff side of local government. She's relatively new to Berthoud. She's lived here for about a year, but she's owned property here for 4 or 5 years, so she's kind of transitioning out of her career into retirement, coming from the greater Chicago land area where she held positions as a community development director, a village manager for a couple different towns. So she really just has a pretty big depth of experience. Obviously, still wants to find a way to utilize that skill set and give back to her chosen retirement community. So, with that, we felt like there would be a lot of knowledge, a lot of respect for the staff side of things, since she had spent so many years as a professional on that side. And she did just note that she really has a passionate about downtown development or redevelopment. So obviously something that's important to our Mountain Avenue corridor. So we did recommend appointment of Ms. Sigmund. The other applicant was a gentleman named Mark Brody. Mark Brody also has a lot of good experience. He kind of doesn't necessarily have any direct planning experience, but he's obviously been a very concerned citizen in a lot of different communities that he's lived in. So he's comes with a diverse experience, having lived in the town of Lyons, who had kind of one view on growth for a long period of time. And he kind of saw, I guess, what I would call a no-growth policy and what that does to a town. And then he also lived in the town of Erie, which was a little bit on the other side of the spectrum, where there was just almost rampant growth and maybe a little bit too fast-paced, where the town was struggling to keep up. So we felt that, plus his professional experience in the corporate world, also made him a good candidate. And so we were recommending appointment of Mr. Brody as well.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or discussion on those two appointments? Do we have a motion to approve their appointment for the next 2 years?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Trustee Hardy has made a motion to approve both candidates. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That would be Trustee Ayers with the second. We could do a roll call vote on both appointees.
Trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
Trustee Wing, Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
Trustee Kurtz,
Yes.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy.
Yes. All right. Congratulations and thank you for your service, folks. Moving on to the next set of appointments, we'll be discussing two appointees for the Port Committee. If the interviewers could speak to that.
Yeah, so we had two applicants for 3 positions, Anna Murphy and Callie West. Both of them have served on the Port Committee for their last term, or for their entire term previously. Anna Murphy has been the secretary, and Ms. West is as a newer member of the community, brings, as she said, sort of newer influences. She kind of has a different take on the things that she's looking out for as a newer member and as an older member of the society. However, both of them were well-versed in all of the points that had come before the committee in the past couple years. Both of them shared the need to get community feedback, to participate in the meetings. They both take their advisory role very seriously to the board. Both of them are, it's been my experience that both of them have been consistent participators in those meetings, not just sort of passive participants, but actively asking questions and making suggestions to the committee. And so, actually, Trustee Kurtz, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you did a great job summarizing it. Yeah, I guess really it just, I got a general sense, besides all the qualifications and the experience, just a sincere interest in serving a second term from both candidate, which is very much appreciated. So, yeah, kind of goes, not, I guess goes without saying, if they've done a first term and they're still very interested and have done a good job, it seemed like a good fit. Yeah.
So, we recommend that we approve Anna Murphy and Callie West.
Awesome. Any additional discussion or questions? All right, do I hear a motion on approving both candidates?
I'll make that motion again.
All right. Trustee Hardy has made a motion to approve both candidates. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Oh, Trustee Wing's got it. Can we do a roll call vote on this?
Trustee Wing,
Yes.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
Trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
Trustee Kurtz,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy.
I'll be abstaining on this due to a conflict with one of the applicants. All right.
Conflict.
No, you're
There is now.
Anyhow, thank you. Motion
Moving on.
passes. Moving on to our next item, appointments for the Tree Advisory Committee. We have 3 candidates that were interviewed. Trustee Wing, if you would
Yeah,
like
so
to
we have
dive into it.
Three applicants for 4 positions. Paul Furnace, Rick Kirkab, Pro Tem Murphy, and myself did the interviewing. It was Kathy Mitchell, Randy Neese, and Hannah Daniels. Very impressed with all 3, very passionate, want to have goals that are set and very proud of what's been accomplished, care sincerely about the town. Kathy is a master gardener. Hannah is learning a lot and really wants to stay engaged, as they all do. So it was a very rewarding experience, and it was great to see the citizens taking such an interest in the town, and would highly recommend these 3 applicants for the positions.
Thank you. I think Trustee Wing summed it up, and I'm fully supportive as well as an interviewer. Do we have any additional questions or discussion? Yeah, do I have a motion to approve our 3 candidates?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve
All
the
right.
candidates.
Trustee Hardy has made the motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
And Trustee Kurtz made a second on that motion. Do we have a roll call vote on that?
Trustee Kurtz,
Yes.
Trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
Trustee Wing,
Yes.
Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy.
Yes. All right. Again, thank you to all the candidates, everyone that volunteers their time on the committees and commissions. I really appreciate you being here and being involved. We couldn't function without your input and advice. So, moving on to the next item. We'll be discussing the Mountain Avenue and Second Street concept presentation, and our own Walt Dealish will be presenting on that item.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Recall your last meeting came before you with a suggestion, recommendation that you agree with us in hiring Asher Architects to do some renderings for the redevelopment of the town-owned public works site over in the corner of Second and Up. Thank you for agreeing with us. So we've engaged Asher Architects since that time. And this past Monday, David and his team put together some concepts for you all to consider, 5 brief questions for you to respond to. Thank you for doing that. So what we'd like to do this evening is David is here and his team to go over a few of these slides with you, their concepts, their sort of conceptual thoughts for this site, and get your input. We're not probably at this point looking at how many stories you want a building to be and things like that, not that specific, but more in the general sense. Do you want to see open space? Do you want to see commercial? Do you want to see housing on the site? To give them and staff a better idea of what you all would like to see happen with this important site to our gateway in downtown Berthoud. So with that, I'm gonna ask David to come on back up. And he'll go through these slides with you, and we wanna have this as a discussion, communication going back and forth.
So you'd like input as we go along, don't wait till the end if that's.
I'll leave that up to David.
Okay.
Up to you guys. If you want to butt in and say anything, you're welcome to. If you want to wait till the end, we can discuss all of them, that works as well. So we appreciate the opportunity. We're really thankful to work with the town on this exciting project. It's such a great corner where our office is right down the street. We all drive right by it every day. So we're excited to be a part of this. We thank you guys for the opportunity. So my name's David Stranathan. I'm an architect, and this is Josh McCarn. He's a landscape architect. So we wanted to run through the options that we have here for you guys to look at. We're excited to learn more about your guys' thoughts. You guys have all seen the property for years too and had your thoughts. So we're excited to learn more about what your guys' vision is, any ideas that you guys have to bring to the table to help us move forward to hopefully come up with a concept that the majority of citizens feel like, yeah, that's a great idea. So that's the goal here. We see a lot of ways to incorporate numerous ideas. You know, we've got ideas with Berthoud's history, and we want to bring in the modern ideas and make sure that this really fulfills everybody's needs. We've also tried to incorporate research that was completed during the last time that everyone revamped the comp plan for Berthoud. Make sure that, you know, the main things that we saw in that was that everyone said we got to retain the small town charm. That's kind of a big thing with Berthoud. Don't let it grow too big, too fast. So make sure we have that in mind while encouraging community growth and gathering economic opportunities. That came up over and over while still having a lively downtown. So it's great to work on a downtown property. Want to foster a strong sense of community, create spaces that serve the residents as well as visitors, try to get people into the town to come and enjoy a day here. So we've got 3 concept ideas to share. They're at different ranges of development intensity. So I think everyone's already kind of seen them. We just want to walk through kind of some of the ideas, how we got to what we're sharing with you. A lot of it was just to kind of bring out a difference of ideas and make sure that we're providing some parking, we're providing some outdoor space, we're providing some business space and some residential space, and just kind of get the ideas flowing to be able to talk from here. So with that, I'll let Josh discuss concept number 1.
All right, here, concept number 1. This idea is putting the open space at the forefront here, kind of reflecting the town of Berthoud's motto, Garden Spot of Colorado. So as you're coming, west on Mountain, you have a, more formal garden space there with the building behind it. This walled parterre garden here has some symmetrical beds around it, a sunken lawn terrace, upper terrace for dining, and then some walks around. So you've got a combination of, small intimate gathering spaces, for everyday, hangouts with friends. And then the pergola shade structure at the south end there also offers an option as like a stage, so the lawn can turn into a kind of a performance space for everybody there. Then, dressing up the alleys is one thing that you'll see kind of throughout all the concepts. And, getting kind of that vibrant alleyscape where you can also have businesses fronting on there and just get more, kind of linear footage and frontage of retail and restaurant space there. On this one, you can see, I don't know if I can use a mouse to point here, I'll try. Along this way, we're keeping the alley open to vehicular and pedestrians. If you're familiar with the shared street concept, it's a concept where it'll look, similar to this photo of the alley in here where vehicular travel is still possible, but it looks more pedestrian oriented. And then as you move south of the alley, you can see we kind of combined the library's parking with parking for downtown and this development as well. During festivals or events, the parking can be used for food truck staging, vendors, things like that around there. And then to the south, there's we're showing some residential townhomes, apartments, condos on the south end there to kind of tie into the existing residential there.
I have a few comments on that. Are you done with this one? Yeah. On the deck we got, that rendition on the right side was the whole page. You can't make it look like that, can you? You don't have that in your.
So we combined them into one for this presentation.
Yep.
Okay, I took the liberty, if you will. First of all, you guys did an amazing job. The stuff you put in there, the fountains, the drop down, the steps, the terrace. I thought you did an incredible job. If I could give this to you, and you guys are the experts, I just want to show you something where instead of having this right on the main street, I don't know if I can use a pointer up there if we have one. But I took that out and center this on it and then did the commercial around it.
Sure.
So then you really make the main road is all open. It doesn't
Right.
have any buildings on it.
Sure.
But then you get a whole bunch of commercial, and then I back the commercial up. And whether we do residential or make this all parking, and I'll give a copy if you want to just slide it down what I was kind of thinking there. But the concept of all the stuff you're adding in, the beautification, the different levels and stuff, I think it's outstanding. And again, I don't have a part of, what I'm thinking of doing here, if I'm okay standing up here for a second, am I out of order here?
I was gonna say, if you could just maybe have a seat and just ask questions right now while they're doing their
Okay,
presentation.
that's what I was
Save the
asking.
comments for a little bit.
That's why I thought.
If that's okay,
No,
Trustee
I'm
Lynn.
fine. I
Okay.
just thought that was
No,
the
no problem.
exchange, so.
No problem.
Mr. Wing's an excited development.
Yeah, I think it's incredible.
Me and
That's
Mr.
great,
Wing walked
yeah.
around town one day. I'm like, this is awesome. I wish I could do this every day.
I
There's
know.
Ideas flowing. Wish we just had millions of dollars. We could build it all.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to David to talk about concept 2 here.
Okay, so this is kind of that classic downtown 2-story vibrant building on the corner, invites you in, maybe a fountain or a sculpture on the corner there as you enter from the east. This just becomes the gateway to Berthoud, where you feel that you're passing this building. Possibly that breezeway connection could be an arched opening, a picture like stone arched, and kind of give a nod to the building across the street there at the museum. This plaza is kind of a flex space, could be just casual gatherings. People are hanging out, there's some outdoor seating, there's just spots to hang out with family, or it could be for a larger event. The stage built in there, the option again for food trucks around. This time we did a raised terrace, kind of gives that opportunity for people to sit around the edges of it, or kids to run and play and jump off of it. And then for residential, this 2-story building offers the ability to have residential on the second floor, whether that's condos or apartments that, open-ended there. Allows businesses to have some street front so that they're visible and everybody driving by sees the business. It also allows them to have that rear access where they could have outdoor seating. And it allows the plaza to kind of be this hidden space. And there's pros and cons to that, but I know I love when traveling, you find that spot that only the locals know about. And there's this intrigue of going through that breezeway or walking down this alley. And here's a spot that everybody that drives down the mountain didn't know was there. Only you found it because you got out of your car and you walked around and you saw this space and you found it. So it just kind of gives locals some ownership of it, allows visitors to feel like they found a great place, and allows those businesses to have that street front where everyone sees them and keep the downtown vibrant. Still some parking here along Walsh. Got a good number of parking spaces, 26 spaces in this layout. Again, allows for that to be closed off. In this version, we did not connect it through to the existing alleyway there that goes next to the athletic club. This one is separate, still provide parking for the library, offers additional parking for the library, and would be easy to close off for an event and use that as a multi-function space. This building could easily be modified to push it away from Second another 15 feet and allow angled parking, diagonal parking along the west side of Second Street. Because we know parking is going to be an issue for citizens if this were to move forward. So, anything you would add there?
I think just one thing to, another thing we've kind of, used as a constant throughout all of these is trying to open up to the alley and the back of the house spaces for existing businesses, so that this project would kind of be a catalyst for, future alley-loaded development. Get people excited about that, if they were to, the athletic club, were to do outdoor yoga back there or something, or have a beer garden or something in the back, but have that, additional frontage, so, you have more people, more things happening in the alleys. So, like David was mentioning, those kind of, secret finds, when you find, hey, there's this back there, I never would have seen that, if I hadn't gotten off a mountain and come into that space. So just, really maximizing the real estate and, creating more frontage by, increasing pedestrian traffic on the alleys. So.
Also benefits the library, that existing little green space that the library has where their reading area looks out at that. We just added to that instead of creating intersecting alleyways right at the back corner of the library. Try to give the library more of an outdoor focus.
All right. Concept 3 here. With this one, we really played up the business opportunities, residential space, and the open space. So, kind of look at focusing on Sport for Berthoud's economic and housing needs. So this one, at the ground level, you'll have the variety of storefronts, office spaces, and everything that open onto the street, but also onto the terrace that you can see in the center there. And then a covered plaza, so you can see kind of where the, try and get that little mouse up there. Where the buildings dip in between here, the idea is that this would kind of be a covered plaza, so almost like the building bridges over the top. So to, really draw people into that space, have a unique space for, possibly some covered outdoor dining, things like that. And then as you flow through into the terrace space, you'll start to see in this one, a interactive fountain there, potentially a stage, maybe it has public restrooms or something like that in it. But very flexible space here. Could be used in the winter for, ice skating or winter market, something like that. And then again, it also opens up onto the alley. This one, again, the shared streets, so you could get vehicular traffic and pedestrian through there, even though it's going to look much more pedestrian oriented. And then the shared surface parking down below, with the food truck and, market vendor opportunities. And then in the southeast corner, to address the existing residential, have a, little corner pocket park there, possibly some more, outdoor dining in this. And with this one, we're looking at 3 stories, having, the ground floor retail, then like in the northwest corner, you'd have a restaurant with a rooftop bar, and then, residential for the other, and possibly, office space for the other 2. And we just wanted to show like this, this image over here with the historically scaled 3-story that there are ways you can do it so it doesn't seem, so in your face with 3 stories, by pushing back the ground floor and really pushing back the 3rd floor. That's an opportunity to kind of reduce the scale while still utilizing that real estate and making the best of the, you know, the small area that we have here, so. And this one, again, it's got 34 spaces of parking here. And, yeah, I think that's it. Did you have anything else to add on that one? No, I think that's great. All right. Then we can open it up to questions, comments, suggestions.
Absolutely, thank you. Let's start with questions. Any of the trustees have any questions on any of the three concepts? Mr.
Question
Hardy?
for Christian. Do the food trucks charge sales tax when they're in town?
They should be, yes.
Okay. And then this is going to remain a town-owned property after it's developed, or is there something?
I think that's yet to be seen. So maybe just to take 2 steps back. So one of the reasons why we're going through this exercise, this property, the skate park and the Old Streets site has been talked about as a redevelopment opportunity for some time. Some of the trustees that have been on the board a little longer may recall that we did an RFP. We've done a couple of different RFPs for development ideas. And this site has struggled to get interest. And we also didn't want somebody to say, this is what we think the right idea is for the site. We thought it's better to put some ideas on paper to say, you know, not to design the site, because I don't think that the town will ultimately be the developer of this property in a kind of a commercial development sense. I suppose that remains to be seen. That's up to the board, but I don't know that we want to get into the retail and residential development business. So we'd be looking for a development partner. And so I think what our hope is here is that we'll look at these concepts and say, here are the parts of these concepts that we like or don't like. Maybe we really like the 3-story with that 3rd story being set back. Or maybe we feel like that's too big of a scale and we want something smaller like concept 1. Or, hey, you know, we love the plaza space, but we don't love the stage. Or, you know, we love the sunken lawn, we don't love the raised lawn. So I think taking some of those elements that we can put together a concept that if we do go out for another RFP, we can tell potential developer proposers, this is what we've already said we really like. And so your proposal should be similar to this or darn near the same if you want to have a lot of success in that proposal process. And then they can tell us, well, here's what we think it's going to take from the town in terms of incentives or otherwise in order to make a project like this work. And maybe they don't need any. Maybe this is a total market rate deal and that's okay in the context of an RFP.
Just part of my question on whether it's town-owned or not is how that would maybe affect our interest in having like a housing authority and having the residential part be kind of income-based type residential units.
I think even in the context of if the board's priority was affordable housing, I don't know that we would want to be the owners of that. But there are partnership opportunities with Loveland Housing Authority, or if the board decided to create its own housing authority. I suspect there are other ways to go about that, but I don't, even in that situation, I don't think we would ultimately be the owners of the property.
Yeah, well, that's just kind of where it's like the ownership of the property. If there's a way to deed restrict just the residential sections of an existing building that's got commercial on the bottom of it, could we somehow?
I think that the value is.
Terms on there that says the residential in this area has to be available for income-based.
So I would say, look at it this way. The town owns the property today and is in complete control of what gets done there until such times it transfers hands. But that deal can be structured in such a way that there are requirements for what can be built on the property. And so there are ways to do that, to keep, to keep somebody from acquiring it and then just going off and doing whatever they wanted, right? I mean, we wouldn't do that. We would never sell or transfer the property under those conditions. So if the board said, hey, this has to be affordable housing, well, we're not doing this project, or hey, it has to be office space and maybe some restaurant space, or we're not selling this property, I think we can do that in the context of the deal. We went through that exercise once before at the old town hall site. Unfortunately, that deal fell through for a number of different reasons. But, I think that would be the intent here. Yeah. And so again, I think our hope is to get feedback from you about, kind of big picture items like, scale of the buildings, mix of uses, you know, how much of the site gets used as open space and how does it connect to the other properties and some of that kind of stuff. I think that's what we're looking for from you tonight, is we kind of refine a couple of concepts. Ultimately, if we went out for an RFP, that developer would have the ability to say, okay, we've taken your concept and we refined it into something we think works, and then you can decide whether or not you like that through that RFP process. But our hope is that we could give somebody something and say, this is what we're looking for. Can you make this work, or something very similar, and under what terms? Hopefully that makes sense.
Those are my questions.
Any additional questions?
I don't really have questions, just comments.
Okay. I'd honestly love to open this up to the public if possible.
Yeah, no
All right.
issues there.
Again, as we stated before with non-agenda items, if you could keep your comments to 3 minutes, I'll call you up. State your name, your address, and submit your comment before the board and to our representatives here. Do we have hands in the audience? Go ahead.
Do I stand?
Yes, please. Please approach. Name and address. Thank you.
My name's Gina Samus, and I'm kind of involved with the old ladies group. I'm sorry, the,
Golden Links.
what's the name of it?
Golden Links.
Golden Links, that's it. Yeah, we don't talk that way, but anyway, that is such a coveted piece of property in this town. And because it's town-owned, and because we desperately need a community senior center, it absolutely makes sense to me, and we've been talking about that space, that there's plenty of room to add, especially on this concept number 3, to the library. We could just add an equal amount of space as the library, or even smaller, and extend the parking lot out from there, and then the whole other part of the front that should be on Mountain Avenue, and, commercial, whatever, restaurants, we desperately need restaurants, could be up there where people can see it. We really, really need that, and it was taken from us, and we need a place back that services, 50% of this community in all kinds of services. I'm sure that they told you. I know somebody spoke before, but we desperately need that. And that's the perfect space, because a lot of these elderly people do not want to be driving further than town, the town streets, They're old and they need a very close parking area where they don't have to be walking a long ways to get to the building. So they need equal representation. I'm now considered elderly or senior. So anyway, I just think that would be an ideal place for it.
Yeah. Thank you, Mrs. Samus. Any other audience members?
Leslie Tassie, 945 North 4th Street in Berthoud. I was just thinking about the size of this town is getting to be. And because I joined the writers group in the library about a year ago, I was thinking that library is teeny tiny. And I think there was a time when they were hoping for expansion of the library. When I found out that that there were future plans for this property next to the library, I thought, wow, maybe you could make the library a little bit bigger. Because there are a lot more families around, a lot of kids, a lot of meetings that could be held there. So that just, yeah. So that was my thought on this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional members of the audience?
Hi, Richard Rock, 534 5th Street. As you can see, I got my AARP thing on. I've lived downtown for almost 45 years. I've seen a lot of stuff happen. I also have another piece of property that is in downtown Fort Collins, in a 4-story, commercial on the bottom. So I kind of see what's happening in downtowns. It needs to be vibrant. Nothing against AARP or something like that, I get it. But we need to have something that is new and exciting. And I encourage everyone here to go to Fort Collins, go to the Exchange, where it is lots of micro, smaller businesses. We really don't need any more. If there's housing, let's put it out there. We need a vibrant downtown. People want small, interesting spaces. And I'm telling you right now, I see it all the time. It works. It's thriving. This is what Berthoud needs. Thanks.
Thank you. Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see it, ma'am.
Linda Wilson, 1461 Merlette Street here in Berthoud. And the concepts are great. I would like you to keep in mind the parking spaces. When you're talking about residents, they're going to be parking there, could be 24 hours, and lots of times they have more than one car. But do keep that parking in mind for the businesses that are coming, the businesses that are already there. I think that's very important because if you don't have parking, you're not going to have the people being able to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments?
Brian Lack, 706 7th Street. A couple of questions. I wonder if we bunched the old town hall, which sounds like has kind of failed, if we bunched the two properties together, if that could increase our odds of something happening. I'm also curious if there's anything we've learned from the old town hall process that we could use in this process so that we succeed in succeeding. And then I guess I almost look at our old downtown as like if you have a house party, everybody ends up in the kitchen or the living room. And I kind of look at our old town as the kitchen during a house party. It's where everybody wants to go. It's where the actions, people are coming and going. I'm not sure if an office space or living space is what we want to draw people to our downtown to spend money. And I think that the big block stores, they're great. There's a time and a place for them, but small micro places where different people can have different goods and services would be worth considering. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Do we have anyone online, Clerk Smore?
We do not, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, thank you. I'll close public comment then and bring it back to the board. Start with Trustee Wing on comments
Yeah,
on these
I
concepts.
want to congratulate Asher Architects and also Mr. Elish. You came to us and you asked us for ideas before, and I think you did an outstanding job of incorporating the things we talked about into your renditions here. So again, I think you did an excellent job with your various iterations of how to use the property. I would also concur that I think the small boutique, creating some excitement destinations as opposed to offices and or maybe even residential. I really think this could be part of the downtown with all the businesses. So I think it's a very good start.
Thank you. Trustee Hardy?
Yeah, I like the ideas. I like the comment about making the diagonal parking on Second Street. Add kind of more parking down there because parallel parking doesn't seem to bode well down there. I do like the idea of smaller boutiques, give opportunity for small business. Even if it's just a small smoothie shop, something, because not everybody can afford to rent 1,500, 2,000 square feet. But if we could create a space that gives them an opportunity to start off a small smoothie shop or cookie shop or something like that would be great. And then maybe push the office and residential to the upper floors where you're not really abiding by the street traffic. The food truck concepts, I'm kind of overkill with the food trucks. I don't know, it seems like that's the only way we can drive excitement is with food trucks. I think we need to drive excitement with more brick and mortar. I mean, food trucks are kind of nice add-on, but I think we put too much focus on them a lot of times, and takes away from some of our other existing downtown businesses that are serving food. So I'd really like to just try and find more ways to bring those dollars into the brick and mortar facilities. But other than that, I like the idea that Brian brought up about maybe we can combine these two lots as a single RFP sort of thing, like you get 2 for 1 sort of thing, and you get to develop both of them. Maybe the reason why it's failed in the past is it's too small of a project, or maybe the scale of having 2 locations would benefit finding someone. I don't know.
We've had those
what the process is,
conversations
but
with
that's kinda
developers in
what
the past. We did, at the original RFPs that went out, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, were kind of structured that way as an option or an opportunity. There hasn't been interest in both. It's not to say that there wouldn't be, but in the conversations we've had, they're separate enough and they're unique enough that, you know, they don't really go together as one project in a developer's mind, and it's not to say that they couldn't. And so we could present them that way in the RFP as an option, you know,
Okay.
maybe that there's some, you know, added benefit potentially if you did both properties. But yeah, I think in the conversations that we've had, that hasn't been of interest. If Mayor Pro Tem Murphy, if you want me to answer the other questions that Mr. Locke brought up, I could do that too.
I was just gonna hold till the end.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Okay,
So I think that's all my comments.
okay. Trustee Albrecht?
Yeah, I think Asher Architects does a beautiful job. That's a small space, and you guys did more than I thought we could even do with that. Beautiful, beautiful renditions. Personally, just from years of being downtown, working with the Historical Society, working at the fire department, having kids who use the skate park, going to the Habitat store and the library, and just talking to everyone down there, I feel like these designs are a deviation from what the town uses that space for. I do not feel like it's appropriate for commercial, or especially not residential in our downtown area. And I'm not trying to be harsh in saying that. I think it's just that over the years, I've developed a vision based on things that have been brought forward from staff, from the mayor, from the Historical Society community members, of what that space is meant to be for and what it can be, that I have a very different vision than what we're being presented. And so I feel a huge push-pause moment, like, for 2 reasons. One, because I think it's a deviation from the vision that I have had brewing over the years from the community. And 2, I think it's very similar to the town park redevelopment, which is perfect for, or not town park, I'm sorry, the Old Town Hall redevelopment, which I think that design is perfect for that area and will work great to have the commercial, you know, the living spaces, the small businesses, that kind of infrastructure, but I don't think it's appropriate for this space in town. And if I could just share with you the vision that has been developed over the years, and part of that's from old designs you guys have showed us. I have to blame Will Karsbeck because his stinking carousel is stuck in my brain. And then even some of the local churches and the Historical Society have talked about this space. The vision that I see for this space, and I think this resonates with the community, and if not, I want to hear back from them, is a pedestrian area with walking space, tables, lights, places to gather, listen to music, have food, more parking, perhaps turning that old brick structure that we saved into a concession stand with the carousel right in the middle of the lawn. That's kind of this vision it's developed after talking so many years to Will and to the different community members about the historical value of that particular corner. When you come into Berthoud, that is going to be the first property you see. It's the mountains and that property. And what's beautiful about that property is you see that beautiful mural of the climbers driving the Model T on the athletic club, and you see the Historical Society with the old Mason building. And just having worked with them for years, having events there, they could use an overflow space to have some of their concerts and events. And I think some of the design elements would be well incorporated, like if we had the parking that could accommodate more food trucks for a food truck type event. I think that's a perfect use for that space. We need more parking, but I would just like us to entertain the idea that we don't heavily develop this property and we make it more open, more airy, and have something that is actually a staple of Berthoud that's unique and quirky and historical, which to me aligns with our strategic plan that we put in place this year to preserve history in Berthoud. And we have access to this carousel that Will has been talking about for years. I know that's it's not a silver bullet, but the idea of something like that would bring people to Berthoud. It's a unique stopping point. People are going to see it, and it's going to draw people downtown. Whereas if we build something that Fort Collins has, even though I love the exchange that was mentioned earlier, if we build something similar to Fort Collins, people are just going to go to Fort Collins because there's more there. There's more accessibility to different businesses. I don't think Berthoud needs to imitate that just because we will end up losing business. I think if we build something unique that has a gathering space, we have lots of grassy gathering spaces downtown. We have Fickle, we have Town Park, and Wagner. I don't necessarily think a grassy space is entirely the best use either because we already have those. So I picture dining and outside gathering, places to go to the library, get a book, sit down and have somewhere nice to read a book. For all ages. And that's just my little tangent for a minute, and I hope that we can, if I'm at all correct, I wish we could poll some of the community to find out if it at all resonates with something they'd like to see in that space. That's what I got.
Thank you. Trustee Kurtz?
Yeah, I'll keep my comments, I guess, relatively brief. One, I just agree with the other trustees' comments. You all did a great job and can really kind of see in my own mind's eye what these concepts could be. I guess do have one question, and I know it's not our responsibility, but seeing the adjacency of the library, it did just make me think, not that we would need to dedicate any space or a ton of space, but it might be worth a check-in with the library district. Of course, they're a completely separate special district on if, I know they had plans to go somewhere else and that required a voter initiative and it didn't succeed, so I don't know where they're at, but it would be.
They actually did study this site as
Okay.
an option that we offered to them during their last bond measure, and they didn't like this site.
Okay.
Their priority was the Wagner site. I honestly don't recall why we met with their staff and their architecture team to look at this site and how it laid out, but for whatever reason that didn't rise to the top for their priorities. That's not to say it wouldn't today. Obviously, the space at Wagner is gone. It's pickleball courts now.
Yeah.
After their bond request failed, and I don't know if they're intending to go back out for another one, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that the
we haven't
building
heard
at
about it.
Wagner was pretty, I mean, the visualizations were really stunning, and I think it was a pretty large footprint, so it may not work. Their plans may not work regardless, because I don't.
It does. The space needs they had fit on this site as well.
Okay. Well, I guess my vision to steal your brain would be a small allocation to the library in partnership with them if they wanted it, and they would kind of be teeing off because I guess I'll take a slightly different stance than my fellow trustee, and it's just because I don't have the history, but of the options presented, I prefer option 1 and 2. I think option 3, though, is nice. I think just kind of emphasizing commercial and emphasizing open space, maybe not emphasizing residential, because I do think that can be addressed in other places, so not try to squeeze too much into one area would be my preference. I think I might have a slight bias towards option number 2. I also agree with in my travels where if you walk down an alley and you didn't even know something was there, and all of a sudden you walk into some live music and some happening bistros and stuff, I think that's pretty awesome. And whether or not a development like that, I guess from a financial, like developer could pull that off, I think is another question, but in terms of the actual concepts presented, I would lean towards concept 2, though I do think there might be some opportunities with concept 1 to incorporate some of Trustee Albrecht's vision where you have the commercial pushed back away from the street, you have that kind of big open space, preserving, potentially rearranging the buildings a little bit, but preserving the mural that's on, of the Model T and stuff like that. So I don't have necessarily a strong preference for 2. I think 1 could work great too, but I would say gathering spaces in commercial would be what I personally would want to see emphasized, and I think you've captured that to my liking in the one deal.
Thank you. Trustee Ayers?
Yeah, thank you guys. These are, to have these pictures, even though they're not, obviously they're sort of 30,000-foot pictures, this is incredibly helpful to go through these different options to get our brains working. So I'm also concerned about, I guess I share Trustee Albrecht's concern about, this is the first thing you come into town to see, basically, right? You go around the roundabout, you see BRADS and Habitat, and then this is the property. And so I'm also hesitant to make the first thing that you see, especially with a town whose residents are rather concerned about population growth, is apartment buildings in downtown or apartment spaces, condos downtown. So I would also want to focus more on commercial or businesses or office space, that sort of thing. And I like parts of all of them. And that's kind of the difficult thing when I was looking through this, is like, oh yeah, that looks good. And then I would get to number 2, like, oh yeah, that looks good. And then number 3, yeah, sure. So I think my I guess concern about having in number 2, how can I, let me just go through the things I like first, and then we can go through my ideas later. Bracketing the park or bracketing an open space, awesome. I like that idea of having the buildings sort of not necessarily surround them like the Exchange up in Fort Collins, but maybe have a little bit more airy, so that if you go into this open space to sit, to read, to do whatever, you have the option of going into any of these open spaces. Breezeways are interesting, especially if they're going through an alleyway or if it's some sort of entrance or exit to the property. Those are visually pleasing. I think, was it number 2 or number 3, where it could possibly be a covered plaza? That's awesome, right? Because that's flex space. You can be outside. You can be possibly put like whoever would develop it, right, could possibly put some sort of barriers there for the winter, or those propane heaters. 2 stories versus 3 stories versus 1 stories. I don't really have, I would be concerned about 3 stories, but I understand with setbacks, it takes that sort of weight off of the building. But just from a design feature, I think being on the east side of town, rooftop space, rooftop space, rooftop space, rooftop gardens, rooftop bars, rooftop restaurants. That way we're looking onto downtown, we're looking down onto the plaza, whatever it's used for. We could see the tree line, we can see the elevator, we could possibly see the mountains and get a feel for the surrounding area. I think that is I don't think that any place in Colorado utilizes rooftops, open space, and public space enough, especially since every concern about development and construction always goes towards, well, you're taking away the view of the mountains. Okay, well, go on the roof, and now you can see the mountains, and you can also spend money at this establishment. I second the comments about, I don't know, I'm kind of conflicted between leaving lawn space. If it's heavily utilized, it might make more sense to have plaza space. But I think with 3, you guys basically took away, with 2 and 3, you guys basically took away most of the lawn space. So I don't necessarily have a comment on that, but if there's something that you could do to keep it a little bit more green, that would be my hope, I guess. I like the flex use of a possible stage, gathering, PA area. I think that's anything that could be focused on that sort of entertainment, outdoor entertainment especially, it would be really good. Let's see here. The public comments that I wrote down that were specific, right? It's needed space for certain populations that need to connect it to the library. It should be new and exciting. It should get people to go down there. More businesses, restaurants, getting food here is gonna make people come down and use that space. I like the idea of multiple, or at least the ability to have many small storefronts as opposed to necessarily just sort of one bigger area. And so I guess with all of those notes, which are kind of random, looking at especially number 2, I guess, and this isn't sort of like covered plaza as an aside. Based on some of the other comments, what if you guys were to flip the building so that the focus is on the park, but then the access, the storefront would then be that secret alleyway and whatever plaza was created instead of the actual street. That way, as you're coming into town, you see all of these people hanging out. You maybe want to sit, you maybe want to get in on the entertainment, and then you're bracketing the area, which I like the idea of the hidden area, but as Trustee Albrecht said, I don't know if that's necessarily the first thing people want to see when they come into town. They want to see sort of like the more community aspect of that. So when I saw these, I was like, oh yeah, that's great. But if we could flip that around, we're still having the same floor space for the building. We still have the same amount of retail space, restaurant space, etc. But then the focus then becomes on the public gathering ground as opposed to necessarily the buildings, if that makes sense. So yeah, this was, because you guys did such a good job, it was really hard for me to pick through these things and sort of cancel it out because, like I said, I liked a lot of the different aspects of these, but rooftop space, man, rooftop space. You gotta get people up in the building, get them up, get them enjoying it, right? Yeah. I hope much of that was English and helpful in some in some way, shape, or form.
I know we already went binding. I just want to second the idea of flipping on number 2. I think that could be pretty awesome. You're talking about like a 180,
Yeah, just Tetris it in there and just flip it on the diagonal so that it's more in front open space, more in front plaza. And then if that is the case and the corner of the building is in the back, there you have the ability for those connections, possibly with
and
the
if you
library.
have breezeways anyways, it connects to the parking, all that kind of stuff. So. Cool.
I think that's all I had.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate it. I would second a lot of those comments, Trustee Ayers. From my perspective, I really see the value in all 3 concepts. Personally, I feel like we need to kind of steer away from a 3rd story. What I really appreciated personally was concept 1, with kind of that plaza space to the east. But I almost feel like the best way to go about this would be to, kind of rotate that commercial element to along the alley and bring it back from the street. We've already got substantial trees along the mountain there. We don't have any kind of natural expansion areas in the streetscape there. So I feel like if you put your plaza on the north side of your commercial and pulled that facade back to the south, I think that would really help. And I think it's probably a 2-story commercial element with smaller spaces that would really work well there. Fully agree on the rooftop space, even if you need to do 3 stories, towards the rear to achieve those rooftop spaces. I think that's something we're really lacking in town. going towards kind of the far south end of the site along Welch, I can entertain the idea of, smaller apartments or townhomes, but I think a discussion definitely needs to happen with the library and if they're interested in kind of integrating this site with that location. But I think we want to keep this, a more historical kind of character to not only the landscaping, but the facades on the buildings. I love that everyone's talking about the exchange. I had the pleasure of being on the design team that did that in Fort Collins, and I feel like it's a really successful example of a really vibrant space. But I don't know if something like that would necessarily work here, if we could take it and make it more traditional, if that makes sense. That would be maybe my comment on it. But I'd love to bring our representatives up here from Asher Architects to talk about any of the comments they heard from the public or from the board. If you need any clarification, we'd love to have some of that, just to understand where you guys are at. We threw a lot at you, I understand that, we'd love to hear your kind of thoughts on that.
Sure, yeah, appreciate it. There's one comment we saw in the survey results from you guys that the residential idea was kind of pushed to the bottom of the list, and just a thought to put out there is for a developer in the future, are they gonna need that piece to make this a functional project? I know that pushes up the parking, and totally agree with the citizen that spoke, but that's the vehicle that's sitting there all day long and doesn't leave, so totally understand all the thoughts and agree with you guys, so it's just trying to find that happy balance that everyone's happy, and we don't know if our ideas will end up getting built anyways, but we wanna hopefully come to the table with an idea that everybody gets around and says, yeah, let's try to make this happen. Let's find a developer that wants to build this.
And we did also speak with some of the members of the Historical Society and then the museum curator, and came away learning that, this used to be kind of the blacksmith corner down here. Not just Bimson, but all the other blacksmiths right as you came into town. So, we do have plans, once we start to refine this a little more to make sure, we're including things like, decorative ironwork and stuff like that that really gives a nod to the historic uses on the property as well. We're trying to, make it Berthoud and make it, have that relation to the past, from long ago, but also, we want it to be relatable to how people use it today too. So that's our challenge. So appreciate y'all's feedback.
Any additional questions or comments?
Just real quick, you guys really, thank you for saying that you were talking to the Historical Society, and I did get to work on those coal gates that they made to honor Bimson, and just being a part of that project, you realize the history that's in that corner, and so anything we could do, not just to put a nod to that history, but to incorporate it is really important. And I hope you guys work on most of our projects, because you guys really do a beautiful job, and so my criticisms, I hope aren't because you guys didn't do an amazing job. You really are, the cream of the crop in Berthoud, so thank you for what you guys do. One of my concerns really is to staff, and the concern I have is, after years of experience on working on this redevelopment of the Old Town Hall, we've come up to the same issue of we are dependent on a developer who requires apartments and residential, because otherwise they don't make enough income to take on the project. And so whoever we work with is going to want to incorporate that. So we have our hands tied the minute we partner with any developer to incorporate a certain amount of residential. And I still don't believe this is appropriate for that property. And I still think by going this big, we are tying our hands to a developer, when perhaps we can go smaller, have a community-centric design come together, have the community come together, work with the library, work with the fire department, work with the Historical Society, and build something that's more simple, more airy, more open. And I do love the rooftop idea, and that was one of the major things we had talked about with the Old Town Hall site, was rooftop dining. And so those are all good ideas that we've talked about for the last 4 or 5 years as a board that are still important. I just don't know that this site is the appropriate place for some of those things. I would be open to some boutiques on the back part of the property for sure, because that's not the first line of sight when you come into town. But I do think, I think we're going the wrong direction because we're ended up in the same place as Old Town Hall and nothing's moved there. And there's reasons for that. And I think we've done everything we can, and you guys have done everything you can, but I don't want this to be the same situation. If that makes any sense. Try not to be mean. Just trying to be honest.
For what it's worth, it's not mean, it's just your opinion. That's totally appropriate, so. This isn't a personal issue for us, so we're not offended if you don't like it. We're trying to bring you ideas, so if the rest of the board agrees, that's fine. It really is of no consequence to us in that sense. Our job is stewards of the community and stewards of the town board to try and execute your vision. We're trying to present you with some ideas, so if you guys don't like them, let us know, that's fine.
Thank you for saying that. I do think that the time and investment you put into something is personal, so
Well,
I
sure, I
honor
mean,
that
we're-
time and respect that very much.
I
So I just
appreciate
want you
that.
to know that.
I very much appreciate that. I know our staff, myself and our staff, we are personally invested in some ways because we care about this community too. This is my home. This is where I live as well. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, we certainly take personal pride in what we do, but at the end of the day, I don't get a vote. So it's our job to bring you guys options to consider, and then you tell us what you like and what you don't. We'll figure out the best way to make it happen.
So on that note, I think there is some, I mean, obviously all the concerns are about townhomes, condos, and residential on the space, right? So I think whatever we do, if we are more forward and more obvious that we don't want that, then it seems like it's going to be an automatic negotiation feature for us to limit the amount if they were to, I'm exhausted, I can't speak today, sorry.
You're doing great.
Right, so,
You're doing great.
if we show someone the vision, if we show someone our interests and our desires for the property, then they have to come to meet us, right? As opposed to the other way, where if they present a property to us with 60% residential, then anything that we negotiate, we're taking away from them, right? So it seems like if we are more strict about not wanting residential, then it's a gift if we do allow it. And so it's a different negotiation tack, I guess, if that makes sense.
Totally
Right, so-
appreciate that thought process. I think, Walt could speak to this more, but when we entered into agreements with developers for Old Town Hall, we kept having to concede more and more just because of the cost analysis for the developer. It needed to be profitable for them, and we appreciated that. We understood we wanted what we wanted, which was the development to be beautiful. But I think in this sense, it's just not enough space. We're gonna end up giving away, I think, more than we won't want to give, and that's just from that experience.
So I think for clarity, I think what Trustee Ayers is saying is right. If you guys don't want residential, then if we ever do an RFP, we just make it clear that projects that include residential won't be accepted. We may not get any proposals. We didn't put any restrictions on the proposals last time. We just had a general description about the kinds of things that the board at that time said they were interested in. And we only got one proposal twice from the same developer. And so, maybe market conditions have changed. Maybe there is an appetite for more retail without residential. I think the more public space we include, the more the town will have to kick in, right? Because that's of no value to a developer. It is of significant value to the town, but that's part of that process, I think, in terms of negotiation. But I think that's kind of the point of this whole exercise, is to be able to dictate, this is what we expect to see in a proposal. And if you submit something that is significantly contrary to that, you should assume that your proposal is not going to be accepted. And so I think there is some truth to the idea that if we leave it open-ended and we just do an RFP, we're very likely to get residential proposals because, one, they're marketable. Obviously, people want to live here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be growing as fast as we are. Two, I think people really want to live downtown. really healthy, vibrant towns downtowns have a lot of residential. I think that's just a fundamental reality of good downtowns. Maybe this isn't the right site for that. I totally respect that, but I do think those are important components of healthy downtowns. But again, I think we can dictate that through the RFP process. If we leave it open, and we don't have a concept in mind, then I think there's a high likelihood that we will get residential proposals predominantly, maybe with mixed use, and I think that would be great. But I think the hope is, let's be specific about what we want, or let's develop it ourselves as a community asset that doesn't have retail or residential or office space. I think that's absolutely an option as well, if that's the board's preference. So, you know, and for what it's worth, these are tough conversations to have, right? And I don't mean this in a negative way, but design by committee is challenging, right? Because everybody has different ideas. Because I know, like, if I was designing it myself and I had all the money and it was my property, I would design it one way, and you would design it another, and Sean would design it another, and Trustee Wing would design it another, right? We would all do it differently. And so, you know, the old adage is you don't invite the neighborhood over to pick your house, your paint colors for your house. But that's not what we do. And so this is just part of that process. And I think this is really good conversation.
There's obviously a lot of success going on in other towns. What has been historically our problem? Is it we don't have an anchor? Is it we don't have the traffic?
We need to drive, we need an anchor, we need tourism destination type things, things that are unique, not similar to other towns near us. Because the other towns have more to offer. So if they have the same thing we have, they're gonna go Longmont, Fort Collins, Loveland. So if we have something unique and charming and quintessential Berthoud, people will come here. And that's where I'm wrestling with this, to me, what feels like a deviation from that quintessential Berthoud charm. Because people are coming here because they love the charm. They're just not shopping and dining here because they're going to the larger places for that. So we want to create a downtown where people are coming to gather, and then they're going to be driven into business. So I say create gathering spaces, amazing event spaces, and then people are going to stay and linger and enjoy the facilities. Like, most people don't even know where the library is, but they will definitely see it if we highlight that in this development, right? And so things like that, like there's appropriate, I think, places for some of this development. This is an opportunity to have a historic landmark that people drive in and they're like, whoa, what is this town? Look at this amazing thing that's here that's nowhere else. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
What about like an event space that's also like a theater that has some small micro restaurants within that?
That's what they designed. I think that's.
Well, no, but like an indoor
Larger
theater.
scale might be kind of
Maybe
nice.
indoor.
Bands outside all the time. You could create a really exciting spot.
Especially if the town, I know that we have initiatives for cultural events, so if the town were to seed for a couple of years, the hiring of bands, and there were just bands there, like, you know, because we did it, I think that would just kind of keep spurring it. Just wanted to add to Trustee Olbricht's comment. I also think the town is just the reason why maybe commercial hasn't taken off is I think we've been hitting population thresholds, you know, during the pandemic and during high interest rates. And I'd be interested in Director Eels's comments on that. But I would like to think we're primed for a really nice commercial development in whatever shape this is or at the town hall site. But I don't know the data. It just seems like we've had a little bit of positive with population growth, if you consider that positive, but in terms of retail follows rooftop, so you would think, where's the retail? But we're, you know, economic conditions and kind of that macroeconomic conditions that didn't foster that development, so.
I think there's two reasons for that.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and based on the conversations we've had with developers,
Yeah.
and just from experience. Development is really expensive. And so new space for local businesses it often prices them out of the market. And that's not always the case. And you can see that in places like, you know, there's some local businesses going into the new shopping center by Heron Lakes. But it's less risky at a place like 287 where there's, you know, 25 or 28,000 cars a day driving by, which you do not have in downtown. You don't even have anywhere close. And unfortunately, we are a vehicle-centric society, and so most retailers look for traffic. Or either that, or they look for population density, or both in most cases. But it's traffic and population density. And so I guess that's my point about residential. Higher residential density in downtowns typically drives more business, right? There's just more people that are close by that are willing to walk or ride a bike. Downtowns don't have giant parking lots. They can be kind of inconvenient in a lot of ways, right? And I say this all the time too. People get really irritated if they can't park in front of a business in downtown, but they'll park at the back of a Walmart parking lot and walk a half mile to get a gallon of milk in the back corner and not even think twice about it. That's just kind of the reality of downtowns. But, you know, again, I think it's traffic and population density. And so when you're making an investment, which is going to be millions of dollars, right? A new commercial retail center is several $1 million. And in some cases, tens of millions of dollars, depending on the scale. You're going to do that in the least risky environment possible. And that's either where you have tons of traffic or tons of people or both. So I think that's just the reality of development in downtown. It's not to say that local businesses can't thrive downtown, and obviously we don't have a lot of vacancy, but that's why you don't see a lot of investment in downtown.
Yeah.
And that's generally been, and I think Walt would agree with me, but that's kind of the message we hear from developers as well. There are a few that do kind of niche development. We've actually had a lot of meetings with them. Walt's done a lot of kind of proactive outreach and marketing to companies in Colorado, regional, kind of smaller regional or local companies that specialize in downtown development, but even they have concerns about investing in our downtown. We've talked to a couple about this site specifically with some really cool ideas that they've implemented in other communities they don't think will work here yet financially. So we are getting to that threshold. But I don't know if we're there yet.
We need that draw of 287, and then these plans, I think, create a synergy where you have all the different events. You have a bunch of venues that are exciting that people from the town will come to. Then they go to the restaurants right there. Then the restaurants are good. People come to the restaurants to go to the venue, and you get this synergistic, and then pulling off 287 where all the traffic is one piece at a time. You eventually build that traffic in these areas.
We need an attainable commercial policy.
Yeah, I mean, downtowns are experiential, right? If they're not, then nobody's going to go, right? Because if it doesn't have a unique sense of place and you don't have unique things there, whether it's businesses or public spaces or you know, kind of tourism draws, all those different things, they have a really hard time competing with suburban retail. And so, you know, you have to make a place that's unique, and you have to try to generate unique interest and unique business opportunities that don't make sense in other places, right? Like there's a really cool example of a beer garden from, you know, there's a company that's done some really amazing downtown redevelopment all over Colorado. Those are unique places that don't fit in suburban retail, right? Nobody wants to go to a beer garden at the edge of the Walmart parking lot, right? It just doesn't make any sense. And so you have to kind of create those spaces or find ways to create those spaces so that you have some unique activities.
If I can park there.
What was that?
If I can park there.
Maybe that's it, right? If you can park it, you know, if you can park a half mile away in the Walmart parking lot, you'd love to go, right?
But wouldn't drive up, yeah.
Chris, if I may just add on. just a
Yeah,
few points. Chris you all make excellent points. This input has been great for all of us, I think. It's good to hear. And May, don't worry about it. I mean, it's good hearing all this input and feedback. To Chris's point, yeah, we've had a number of different businesses, restaurant owners in town within the past couple months. We're getting to a point where they're looking at us, but so much is the population. We're at about 13,000 people now. We need to continue to grow. A few more. Both of them said they like Berthoud, but we're not there yet.
Can we round up? Just tell them.
Well, I do. I mean, as an economic developer, we always round up depending on what we're talking about. And traffic counts, we always round those up too. But the other thing that we just completed was this survey for downtown. We just closed the survey last week. We're analyzing the results as we speak. We got close to 600 responses. So I'll be emailing that out to you all this week, probably Thursday. You can look at it, review it. It's going to be going, we're meeting with the DDA working group next week. I'll be sharing that with them as well. There's a lot of good info in there. And some of it will pertain to what you're discussing tonight, or a lot of it. And I don't remember everything, but one thing I do remember, restaurants, restaurants, restaurants. The more restaurants we can, but we're working on that. And we have a couple restaurateurs looking at us, but once again, somewhat that's always tied to the population base. And that daytime population.
Do you share that threshold, or do they even tell you a threshold?
Each one's a little different.
Yeah.
Each one's a little
A little
different.
bigger, they just say,
Yeah.
oh, a little bigger.
It depends also on who, and their focus, like we had a destination restaurant. I say it's small, but it's a destination restaurant. They're looking at Berthoud. And we're hoping they do land here, because if they do, people will drive here from Loveland or Longmont. I don't know about Fort Collins, but the Longmont and Loveland areas, they would drive in for this restaurant.
Okay, great.
So each one's a little bit different. The more chain type, I don't mean the McDonald's and all that, but the sit-down restaurants, they're looking more for a little more population base, and they're looking at the radius. But, so we're getting there. We're getting there. But like I said earlier, though, thank you so much for this input. It's been invaluable, because that site is important. It's the gateway to our town, and that's why we've been looking at that earlier. Chris pointed out 5 years ago or so, I forget how many years, and Tim, you might remember this, we did look at combining these two sites. But they are different ballgames. That Old Town Hall site is only 3/4 of an acre. It's small. We went out twice with that, and both times it was the same developer that responded. And we hand-delivered that to a number of them. We had them come in, I met with them, I spoke to them on the phone about that site. It's just small. It's a small, not that it can't be developed, but the challenges of that site is the size of it. And it might take some residential on the back side, or on the north side of that, to make that site viable for a developer. Maybe. Things are changing, we'll never know, but this has been really good. I think it's been helpful for all of us.
Absolutely, yep.
I have just one ask of staff.
Yeah.
I just want one other perspective on how to fund the development of the site. Because if we go out to a developer, or waiting for the right developer to come along and pick it up, or even choosing one and trying to get them to agree, could take years, like the Old Town Hall site. There's no guarantee of when or how it will get developed, or if it'll get developed perfectly our way. So my challenge is that we look at other mechanisms for funding a redevelopment of this site on a smaller scale for other uses, similar uses. But what we could do as a town to fund redevelopment, if we cannot find somebody to pick it up and do what we are requesting, which is to not have heavy residential. I think we need to look at that, because I don't want to wait we waited a long time for that Old Town Hall site, and that would be amazing. Those are amazing restaurants we've planned in there, and we've spent hours looking at these beautiful designs. I'm like, I can almost taste it, but it's not there. And so I'd hate to do this again to another important property. And so I'd love to see a plan B on how to develop that in a way that's going to be more expedient, more doable within our budget, if the town has to take something like this on, even if it's in stages of development. That would be my ask of staff.
That's a excellent question. And not to say that we agree with you, but Ann and I have been talking about, Ann Johnson and I, and along with Chris, looking at, there's another tool. Besides the Downtown Development Authority, there's the Urban Renewal Authority. And the URAs are site-specific, so they're not areas. Now, we might, for a site like this, I don't know if this would qualify, but we talked about that tool for the Old Town Hall site, as well as the Jackson Industrial site, as well as potential sites up on Clayton Place. It's a tool that a lot of communities use to develop hard-to-develop properties. And so we are having those discussions.
That's great. Yeah, I would love to hear more about that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, you guys. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for the input. Appreciate it.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to see a picture of this carousel.
Will has them.
Yeah?
He has pictures. Yeah.
We got like first dibs on it?
Yes. It's a Berthoud resident owns it. Yeah, it's in 1920 or something. You haven't been around long enough to hear about the carousel. It's like spinning around in my mind all the time.
All right.
Yeah.
We could. Let's move on to our next agenda item. This would be the comp plan report card presentation by our own director, Ann Johnson. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Murphy and members of the Town Board of Trustees. So tonight's goal is to walk through the comp plan and report on progress made on the action plan that's contained on the very last pages of the comprehensive plan. So for those in the audience that are not aware of how we arrived at the action plan, and maybe for those that might come back to YouTube and review this presentation tonight, I just wanted to take a moment to briefly introduce the comprehensive plan update process. So the comprehensive plan can be found on the town's website in two places. One, it's on the planning page under a bubble that says comprehensive plan, and the other one is on the Planning Commission page, and it is part of the Planning Commissioner's e-notebook. So when in probably late 2019, early 2020, the town decided to embark on an update process. And the approach included a lot of opportunities for public input and hands-on workshops with the public, with Planning Commission, with the Town Board of Trustees. So there were 682 survey responses, 3 virtual open houses. Remember, this was happening during COVID. So 3 virtual open houses. There were also 3 public workshops, and there were numerous public hearings and public meetings for everybody to be involved. Planning Commission, Town Board of Trustees, and the public to be engaged in setting the pace for future development in Berthoud. So a lot of people will ask, what is a comprehensive plan? It's similar to a business plan or your sports playbook. Updating the comprehensive plan takes approximately 18 months. Communities will often perform a light update every 5 years, and then a hard scrub every 10 years, and the vision really should last for 20 years. And the comprehensive plan, I'm going to tell you, it is a vision document which guides future development and growth in Berthoud and how that shall occur. The comprehensive plan is not a legally binding document, and it is not a regulatory document. So the vision from the comprehensive plan then needs to be translated into the municipal code. And I know over the past 18 months, you have been completely enthralled by all of the amendments presented to you for the land use code. And that is how the comprehensive plan gets into the land use code. And again, when you think of the comp plan as a playbook, then that implementation of the action plan is key to success of your business plan or your playbook. So on this page, which unfortunately I cannot even read anymore, but it talks about the implementation, and the first arrow on the right-hand side under section 4, on the left-hand side under section 4, it talks about how this is to guide growth and guide future development. So the plan had intended that Berthoud would continue to grow. And so the bubbles on the bottom, I wanted to talk about 3 in particular. It's, again, it's that basis for regulatory action. So staff takes a look at the vision in the comp plan, we compare it to what's in the land use code, we find those differences, and then we amend the land use code. The next is a basis for community programming and decision-making. So it's how are we going to guide that development and growth? What's important to the town? And then the last one is that long-term guide. Again, how is Berthoud going to grow over the next 20 years? Where is it going to grow? What type of growth might be relevant for certain areas in the town of Berthoud? So again, you should be very, very proud of this comprehensive plan. And those of you that were involved in it, the plan did receive an award by the Colorado chapter of the American Planning Association for an outstanding comprehensive plan and an actionable plan with that action plan that we're going to talk about. So to you all that were involved, the staff that was involved, you should feel very proud of yourselves because this is a very, very good plan. And when new planners come on board, this is one of the first things you'll look for, is where is the town going? How are you wanting to get there? And does this align with your values? Alrighty, so again, the purpose of the comp plan is to identify present and future needs of Berthoud and to establish and communicate preferences and priorities based on those needs. The comprehensive plan is a guide to coordinate and accommodate growth while respecting the town's distinctive character. And so again, that's that balance, that everyday balance that you all face when you come on in here, Planning Commission and town staff as well, balancing growth with vision and some of those items that are important to the town. So you can see on this slide, the plan direction is you have that vision, and then you establish your goals and your strategies, which lead to the action plan. There's a vision statement. I'm not going to read it out loud, but it is on this slide. It's retyped from the comp plan, so it would be bigger. But it talks about economic development, vibrant downtown, continue to grow, but have that small town feel and balance that character. So then section 3 of the comprehensive plan provides the vision statements with goals and strategies. And these, which you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, there are 7 of them. Then those, along with the objective statements, provide a guideline for future development. And so the first one I'd like to point out is to establish a clear new vision for the future of Berthoud that reflects current community values. So it's reflecting current community values while growing in a new way. The third one, just at the bottom, it's to incorporate new urbanist principles that advance transect development, place types, and character districts for guiding Berthoud's physical development. So again, transect planning is you have more rural on the outside and you're coming in, and in that core, that center core, the nucleus of Berthoud, it's very dense development. And then the very last one is the reason why we're really here today, is to provide an accountable tool for evaluating progress toward accomplishing the comprehensive plan action items. So on the next slide, this is just a snip, but there are 58 action items that were in the comprehensive plan. And in your attachment, you have these, and they've been cross-referenced. So the items in blue, and this was presented to you several months ago as well, and this is just an update. The items in blue, they overlap with Open Space and Trails Plan. In gray, they've been completed or they will be completed with continuous improvement and continuous implementation. Items in green are the housing assessment, which we're undertaking right now with the steering committee. Items in that orange color, those are the 2024 to 2026 goal of the Board of Trustees. So you have recognized independently some of the same goals that you did 2 years ago or 3 years ago now in the comprehensive plan. And then items in that light green, those are just, those are directed by code, and those are things that developers get to do when they want to develop in the town of Berthoud. So in this spreadsheet, and we won't go over the spreadsheet tonight, but I want you to take this home and just evaluate and reflect upon what was important in that action plan column on the left. That priority, the timeline, has it been completed? What is it being, how is it being scheduled? Some notes about that. And then we took a look at the community touchstones, a resilient, sustainable, and community identity. And we also added how these particular action items reflect back on those. And then also, could these fit into a sustainability action plan as well? So quite a few of these items are either in progress for 2025 and completion. there. They are already completed. Quite a few items, especially under the environmental sustainability, have been completed. Many of them under infrastructure and improvement will be continuous through development. Like the gentlemen were saying tonight, trails are important and those linkages are important. We can't really do that without development because that's one of the things, again, a developer gets to bring when they have their own private property. We tell them they get to connect to the trail system. And then other items, again, we're looking at, it's a perfect time for budgeting. And this is the perfect time to reflect back on the action plan that was given to us by you, by Planning Commission, by the members of the town of Berthoud, on what should we budget and what's next on our list of things to do so that we're staying true to what the community asked of us. So with that, I'm just going to be quiet now and answer any questions that you might have. I'd like to bring this back maybe on an annual basis right before budgeting. So when we say, oh, but we talked about that, remember we need that money to do this. You'll remember that. All right.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Director Johnson. I really appreciate having the full update on where we're at in the comp plan. It's always worthwhile to come back to. I'll open it up to questions and comments from the board. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add?
Just a comment that I appreciate the update, love the organization and the color coding. It's very easy to understand. Pleased to see our newer kind of board initiatives have a home in this now, and yeah, great job.
Oh, go ahead.
This is a fundamental roadmap. I mean, this is the goals, this is everything. This is what you go, this is the Bible you go back to, what are the things we're focusing on, so excellent job.
Thank you. I was just gonna say, I appreciate the update. The visual of seeing where we're at with everything is super helpful because it's been so many years of hitting all these different marks and not really knowing, are we meeting those goals and how, what ones are we still working on? So thank you for the update and keep them coming. That's helpful. I do think, just based on a couple of development conversations we've had recently, that we will be due for that. I think you called it a 5-year scrub. I think we'll be due for kind of looking at, are there tweaks to make that we've kind of seen now that some developments have come through and then we've pushed pause to say, is that appropriate for certain areas, or are we meeting the mark with this comp plan, or does it need to be tuned up a little? So I'd like us to be thinking along those lines of that's, in a couple of years here that are coming up soon that we need to relook at the comp plan. So that's been on my mind. So thank you for keeping us on track. I appreciate that. It's a huge team effort.
No, I would second those comments, Trustee Albrecht, and that my personal feeling on it is, us undertaking an economic plan and a housing plan and a sustainability plan are all, kind of next level things that definitely should be integral to kind of our update and where we're going with things as we dive into the details, so. No, any other additional? Yeah.
So you brought up a great point about it's budgeting time. So are there specific dollar amounts that are attached to some of these rows, some of these areas?
Yes, so and Chris can jump in too, Administrator Kirk, but when staff reviews these, we look at where the priority was. Are they part of your action plan as well? And then at budget time, we're looking for, we might call our consulting friends and ask them, well, how much would this cost in context of where we know we need to go? And we, seek either grant funding, or we'll seek, general funds or even some enterprise funding to go in to fund those action items.
And so is there some correlation behind, hey, we've got all this stuff we need to work on. We know there's some dollar amount attached to that. Is there a correlation between that and the money we have in the budget to accomplish all the things we're putting on there? How do those two things live together?
Yeah, so I mean, you'll hear me say this when we do our budget hearings too, but our budget is our policy document. And when we develop the budget and we present it to you, we'll identify all the things that we think we need to do or that we want to do. They're all based on our master plans and comprehensive plans. And so we tie all of those expenditures back to this document, the Trails Master Plan, the Parks Master Plan, our sidewalk plans. And I think, what I hope you see here, and that you'll probably, as we have the opportunity to go through other plans and other projects, the plans that we've adopted over the last 5 or 6 years have not been, coffee table books. They've been action-oriented, and we've accomplished a lot of what those master plans identified. And a lot of that is true here as well, but we'll walk through all that when we go through budget and kind of tie all those things together for you, so you see why we're doing what we're doing.
Great, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, appreciate it. Now we'll move on to our last regular item for the night, removal of town property from River Trails annexation. Administrator Kirk, if you'd like to present on that.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Murphy. As you all know, the town recently purchased what we call the Beefus Farm, south of County Road 6C and east of County Road 15, which is First Street. I think Clerk Samora is working to pull up a map just to orient everyone. But on September 10th, at our last town board meeting, the town board considered a substantial compliance resolution in order to initiate that annexation proceeding for the property that is in blue. So the blue and the orange properties identified here were all part of the Beefus Farm. A developer purchased that entire farm, and as you will hopefully recall, we spent a fairly significant amount of money to purchase the land and water associated with the orange piece to preserve as agricultural open space and potential future educational or recreational opportunities, but yet to be determined. But knowing that this was an important piece of open space along the south side of Little Thompson River. When we went through that transaction, we did that knowing that the developer was interested in annexing and developing the north side, consistent with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan. And so, from a staff standpoint, when we talked to them, they offered to annex our piece at the same time as they annex theirs or attempt to annex. So that's yet to be determined, of course. You have not weighed in on that annexation yet, only the substantial compliance resolution to initiate that proceeding. There's some good reasons to do that. There's some cost savings for us and some time savings and some other things. There's good reasons not to do that, I think, as well. And, from our perspective as staff, it seemed like a no-brainer, but I think there was some concern expressed at the last meeting, and maybe even a little bit after the last meeting, about the town's property being included in the annexation request. And so we wanted to bring it back to you tonight. We've already shared with the developer that we may choose to remove our piece from their annexation request. That shouldn't stop their process. Their piece will still come before you within the normal timeframe, excuse me, which is that annexation hearing is scheduled for November 12th. But we can do that with or without our piece of ground. One reason why we can't do it independent of them is we don't have we would not meet the contiguity requirements in state statute if that property is not annexed. So we won't be able to annex our piece into town. But we have no necessary obligation to. We can own property outside of our corporate limits. And that would just continue to be the case here if we chose not to annex. There is cost savings for us in terms of mapping and engineering and some other things that the developer is covering the expense of. If they go through that annexation process and we're included, if we choose to do that on our own, we'll have some expense associated with preparing the appropriate maps and documents necessary for annexation. That's not necessarily cost prohibitive. It's likely in the tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? It's not that expensive in the grand scheme of things, but just something to consider. And so what we're looking to you for is some direction about whether or not to include the orange piece of ground in the annexation request that is going to move forward for the blue piece of ground. Does that make sense?
So can I get clarification? I'm wanting to understand when you're saying if we do remove from this annexation that it cannot be annexed in the future by us. The part we own.
Only if another property, either the one to the north or potentially maybe the one to the west was annexed in the future. But currently, you can see maybe it's not really obvious, but the kind of the lightly shaded yellow properties are already annexed into town. And what you'll see is that the orange piece doesn't touch any of them. And so we have a contiguity requirement under state statute in order to annex. We may be able to do that by annexing right-of-way on First Street. And so there are potentially other ways. We just don't meet that today.
But if the blue's annexed, then we're adjacent to the blue, wouldn't we?
Then we would meet the contiguity
Yeah.
requirements.
Okay, that makes sense.
Trustee Ayers?
Yeah, so I guess I have two clarification questions as well. If the town is joined with the other property for the annexation process, they are going to be annexed as two separate annexations, right? Hypothetically, we would have to annex the blue property first and then annex the second property since they're two different owners?
That's a good question. I think they can be done together. That was the intention. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll table the other one for a second. So if that were to be the case, if we were to annex both properties at the same time, legally, is there a negative to the town since we're annexing within or jointly with a private entity?
No, it's not uncommon for developers to process annexations in conjunction, or for towns to have developers annex their ground along with a developer's ground. It's not, at least as far as I understand from Aaron, there's nothing legally that prohibits that, Attorney Smith and
I'm not
Attorney
aware of
Garcia, yeah.
Okay.
So, and it's not an uncommon practice. in
So
Colorado.
the benefit is just that it saves money for both parties because of the surveying, et cetera.
That's true.
Okay.
That's the primary benefit for us.
And more bang for our buck.
Yeah, it just saves us some money and time. I think that well, I don't want to speak for anyone, but I think that part of the concern was they would muddy the waters for this other annexation if there's some concern about it and the board doesn't want to annex that piece to the north. Certainly, we didn't, from a staff standpoint, we didn't think about it in that context because that property is shown as future development in the future land use plan. So it kind of made sense to us that would get annexed. But if there is concern about annexing that property and maybe it doesn't meet the community interest findings or other things that, other findings that might be made in the context of an annexation agreement, I think the concern is muddying the waters by combining the two together. And so if there is a concern there, certainly, the developer doesn't care if our property is included. And, again, the savings is a little bit of time and money. The potential drawback is that maybe it muddies the waters if there's some concern about annexing the property.
Yeah, I would, oh, go.
Sorry, I have a couple more. Yeah, so, and it's suburban residential down to the river, correct?
That's what's shown in our future land use map.
Okay. And my last question for now is, if the orange property is not annexed.
Sorry, Trustee Ayers, I think there was some confusion. The blue property is shown as suburban residential in the future land use map. Our property is not.
Correct, yeah. If hypothetically we decided not to annex the blue property, what limitations does that put on the town for development of the non-annexed property that would be the orange property?
It doesn't.
Because we own it, we can spend town money for it, even though it's not in the
Yeah,
GMA.
it won't limit our ability to maintain or keep that property or even invest money in it.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, a follow-up on that. Does it cause any issues with like power or water or anything like that?
No, both properties are within our water and sewer service territories. So like, the blue property, for instance, it's zoned rural residential in the county currently. And so if it was developed in the county, we would still be the water and sewer provider. The same would generally be true with our property if there was some development that needed to occur. There's no utility prohibitions or utility issues there, being kind of cross-jurisdictional because we would likely be the provider for the water and sewer utilities anyways.
Okay.
And the power provider's just dependent on their service territory maps as well. I don't actually know off the top of my head if this is Excel or PVREA, because the town splits, those two service territories, but.
Thank you.
Yeah, probably just 2 points of clarification. If I understand this correct, I know we're not having the annexation discussion, but it may influence this bifurcation discussion. The developer could still choose to develop, right? If they, within Larimer County, assuming they met whatever requirement the county has, right?
Yes.
And then I guess another thing, it might be helpful to also pull up the land use map. So I guess what's on my mind is if we were to include both, because we were like, hey, let's just get ours annexed. In a sense, you're then from the contiguity requirement, opening up a lot of properties on the east and the south of our property that would then, by definition, you meet that contiguity requirement. And I don't know if there's any development pressure there, if it's consistent with ours, but it's just something to think about in terms of, is it actually beneficial or not?
I would answer it probably in this way. There's development pressure everywhere around us.
Okay.
We regularly get calls from developers who are talking to farmers who don't want to farm anymore, or who, or maybe they just are whatever. They're looking at potentially selling. So, there is development interest kind of all around us. The future land use map shows the properties to the south of the Bufus property as agricultural.
Okay.
Or rural or residential. There is no suburban residential on our future land use map south of the river.
Is that true for the east too? East of the Bufus property?
That's true. Everywhere south of the river is
okay.
Agriculture or rural residential on our future land use map.
Okay.
That's not to say that they can't request a different zoning designation. Sure. You can't grant one, right? This is not a legislative document. It's a visionary document. So you could grant any zoning designation you wanted to. I think in that context, you'd probably want to make findings about why that's a good idea, and contrary to the land use map. But yes, I think from a vision standpoint, everything south of the river, it was an intentional choice that we made as staff and that we presented to the board that approved this document, to kind of make the river the hard southern boundary for the foreseeable future. And who knows what the goals of the community will be in 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years, but at least kind of in the context of this future land use map.
Yeah. So maybe just kind of make sure I understand it. If the vision, I know it's not a requirement or legislated, but if the vision of the land use map was like, that's what we're going to do. We're not going to change zones. We're just going to, and really our annexation of the Bufus property or the beige orange property wouldn't really result in anything then because.
Well, the property to the east, immediately to the east of the Bufus property is already under conservation easement. It's owned by the Future Farmers of America Foundation.
Okay.
And so that one can't ever be developed because of that conservation easement. And the properties to the south, there are a couple of large properties you can see. Certainly those could be potentially subdivided or redeveloped, but that may occur in the county. I don't know what their zoning designations are, but our future land use map shows them as agriculture.
That's helpful. Thank you. No other questions for me.
Just another quick question, and this is a naive question, I know, but are there other properties that the town owns that are not annexed in the town limits?
No, I don't think so.
That's what
it would be uncommon for us to do that.
I mean, I've never seen a town-owned property that's actually county-owned, so I'm just trying to understand like how that ownership impacts anything we do on that property.
I think we would
I
want
think because
to
we're not
annex our property.
developing it, it wouldn't have a huge impact, right? But go ahead.
Oh, I'm
Help me
sorry. I didn't
help me
mean to cut you off.
understand.
I was gonna say, I think we would want to annex that ground. I think it's just appropriate for town-owned property to be in our corporate limits.
Okay.
I can't think of any that we currently own that's outside of town limits.
Right.
Unless there maybe is a pump station or something on the west side of town.
Sure.
But nothing that comes to mind, so.
That's just a
There are ways
helpful
to
clarification.
do that. Again, I think, we would have to kind of annex down right of way in order to meet that contiguity requirement, I think. But I'm not an annexation expert either, so I better not get too far out over my skis. Ann will slap me after the meeting.
Well, in my experience when we annex, it gives us more ability to utilize space and collect taxes and that kind of thing to our liking versus if it's in county, we have less controls. Obviously more responsibility with when you obtain property, but.
And in this case, you know, being municipally owned, there's no real tax implications because we don't pay property tax. But if we did want to develop something there, we'd have to go through the county's processes instead of our own, which seems silly.
Yep,
So,
exactly.
you know, there's good reasons not to do that.
Thank you for that clarification.
Any additional questions or comments?
I don't have any.
What's the general feel on this item? Maybe we just raise our hands for the folks that are interested in bifurcating this deal.
I would kind of like to hear some thoughts personally because I'm kind of torn on it because I appreciate the idea of removing us so that there's no shown favoritism towards a developer. Or, you know, collaboration with them that is, you know, a favoritism situation. And I appreciate that, but I also appreciate we're trying to save taxpayer dollars by working in conjunction with something that's already happening. But it hasn't been annexed yet, so that puts some, I just would appreciate hearing some other feedback before I make a
Yeah, I'm on the fence. It's kind of like being
decision.
in the chair going, whoa, it's like lean forward. It's like, yeah, it makes good sense and efficiency to do it all at once. But then again, we're also under a microscope with our citizens saying, oh, you guys filling your pockets with money and you did this as a joint thing. And, you know, I don't know, I could just hear all the little rumors that get started on Facebook, you know. It's like, no, it's just an efficiency way of doing things. It has nothing to do with any sort of collaboration or anything. It was a single property to begin with, we did it, but then also understand, keep it two separate transactions. It's kind of like an accounting method. It's a little more cut and dry and clean. It's all separated. And it's just kind of more of an accounting situation than an efficiency thing. Why can't I say efficiency?
I
must be tired.
The properties above 6C, those are county as well, those larger tracts.
That's correct.
And right above that is the farmstead, right?
That's correct.
It's kind of cut off.
Nebraska and
Yeah, it's Mary's Farm mostly, but then Farmstead as you go to the east.
I definitely can jump in. I didn't feel strongly against, or I didn't feel strongly either way on this item. I can understand both viewpoints. I understand the efficiency of bringing them in, and I don't find it objectionable, but I also understand maybe the appearance of a conflict. So I'm willing to support the board on whichever direction the majority would like to go on this item, honestly.
Could I maybe ask a question on, I guess, so we're talking maybe about a transaction cost efficiency, like order of magnitude, if we were to do this annexation on by ourselves, you know, round to the nearest 10,000, like what would that cost?
Maybe 30.
Maybe 30. Okay.
I don't know. Maybe 30 to 50. I don't know.
30 to 50K if we said for optics and maybe appearance of impropriety, we would sit this one out, but the trade-off would be, in your best guess, 30 to 50K of a transaction
You know,
cost down there.
it could be less. I mean, we haven't annexed our own property in a while, so.
Yeah. I'm just trying to put some numbers to help understand that trade-off. Yeah.
So I guess I got one more question.
That's not an insignificant sum.
Trustee Hardy?
Yeah. So if we did do both of these together for an accountability situation, would it still be pretty black and white that it's still two separate land transactions? It's still two separate this? We just happen to do them both in the same night?
No, it really is one annexation map. It's one annexation proceeding with two separate properties.
So it's one annexation with two basically lots,
You're
right?
not really making, I mean, maybe we could treat it that way, but again, I think if you don't annex the parcel north of the river, then the annexation south of the river won't make any sense. And so at least in its current context, we would need to draft those maps and process that differently than what we've envisioned. So, I think, I will say, I think if this was like, hey, everybody here believes this is, and I'm not saying that we need to have that conversation tonight, because I think you need to have that conversation during the annexation proceeding. But if there was no concern at all and no concern had been expressed, I would say, let's just do this. It's simpler. It's gonna save us a little bit of money and time. There has been some concern expressed, and I think there is that, the potential for a perceived conflict. I don't believe there is one, but I understand why people might see it that way. And so I think practically speaking, maybe it's just better to separate the two,
So
so
at the
that
night
there's
of
just
the-
no question.
So at the night of the annexation, when we do this, would it be one motion, or would it be two separate motions? Like, we have sometimes multiple motions, if we have to approve this first and then before we do this. If we did it as two separate motions, would that give some clarity as being separate and still keeping it as one?
I think if we wanted to do that, we're better off just dealing with it
Separating it.
independently.
Just not even doing it the
Just
same
not,
night.
not do it the same day and just do them
Okay,
independently.
I'm just trying to find an easy solution
Yeah.
here to keep it efficient, cost-effective, while still trying to address the possible concern.
Yeah, and I think, I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak over trustee Ayers. I can see him at the end of the dais where I know everybody else can't, so.
No, go ahead. I'm gonna ask a repeat question just for clarification, so go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think, I don't think there's any controversy over annexing our own property. And so the concern is whether or not the desire to annex our property somehow negatively influences or provides undue pressure on the board
Or
to
preference.
annex the other piece. I think the answer to that, personally, I think is no.
Yeah.
But I also understand why there might be that concern, and so I think for simplicity's sake, perhaps we just bifurcate. We do it differently, we do it separately, independent of this action. Like I said, I don't know the developer cares either way. They'll just need to update their maps prior to the hearings, to only have that north piece.
So I'm gonna ask again, you literally just answered me 5 minutes ago, but just so that I 100% understand. If for some reason we don't get to annex our property because as a board, we decide not to annex their property. I understand it's one, right? So we don't get ours if we don't give theirs, right? That does not limit our ability to use the property as we want.
I don't believe that it does. It just means we're gonna have to go through, if we were going to develop something, we've had conversations, not at the board level, so these are just all, but like I've met with the FFA Foundation about some collaborative efforts for an educational facility, for instance, that they would love to see, and maybe it makes sense for us somewhere on the property, an outdoor education or agricultural education facility, combination of the two. Maybe those are cool things. That would just go through the county development process instead of the towns. But I don't think that anything would prohibit us from doing that.
Okay, because I think that's sort of, as you guys all, I think, agree with, that's the gray area here, right? Where we're annexing possibly their property so that we can annex our property, so that we can do what we want and not have to go through the county. But on the second, I don't necessarily want to waste, you said
50 grand.
50 grand so for my part, it is not going to affect when I hear the annexation. My decision is going to be made on the annexation hearing of their property. If we get ours, it doesn't matter, right? With the understanding that if we get theirs, sure, we can then do ours at the same time. But I think, from my point of view, saving that $50,000 is more important, especially since it's pretty obvious that it's not going to affect us really
We have
seriously.
no incentive or.
We have no incentive to help them out so that we get ours, because
It's just a
'Cause
perceived
we could always,
incentive.
we could also always just, like Chris said earlier, kind of
Yes.
flagpole annex the road to get our property annexed. If that property never annexed, it'd be kind of like how we've annexed Love's. We annexed down the highway, all the way down, none of the property, it's just the highway, and then we annexed the property for Love's.
Yeah, and there's always the future possibility that, what's the property to the west?
That's the Wilson farm.
Which, that's always a possibility as well for an inn if
It's not
something.
like we need it annex right away, but hey, while we're there, let's annex ours while we're at it.
I agree completely about saving the money and not being flippant with spending that kind of money. I do think and wonder if we're gonna save money since the town is annexing their own property and there could be some cost savings realized. I don't know the process, so I don't wanna assume too much, but that would be great. My instinct is telling me that we need to separate them because this is a legal proceeding. And when we annex a property, we need to be unbiased. And an appearance is not just appearance, it is, you know, we're showing how we perform these actions to the community. So I think after our conversation, I would lean toward separating the annexations. And, you know, I'm sure we'll do our due diligence to try and cost save where we can on our side of annexing our own property because we want to honor those dollars that are important. But that's kind of where I'm landing, is that we remove them and keep that propriety.
It's like having a conflict of interest and going, is it really truly, or is it just a perceived?
I mean, yeah,
It's
I think
Right.
the question is still on the blue parcel. That would be the question I believe we would be answering, but I think I would probably err on the conservative side as well with trustee Albrecht, which even though I agree we would be impartial, I guess it's the cost of transparency.
It's the perception versus the dollars.
I think you can look at it this way. I think the way you just described it is great. It's kind of the cost of transparency. If they go together and the blue piece is not annexed or that annexation is not supported, we're not out anything, and we end up spending the same amount to annex our property anyway. So the only condition in which this is a benefit to the town is if you annex both. And that does that gives other people argument for why this is a bad idea, right? Because the only benefit to the town is if you annex both. So it starts to feel to somebody that thinks that we're, you know, making smoky backroom deals, which we're not. But I mean, that obviously those ideas are out there. It just gives somebody ammunition to say, see, the town's only doing this because it's going to save them money and that they'll, you know, line their pockets with and, you know, the developer and line their developer friends' pockets at the same time, right? I mean, it's just that whole
Gee, they could have
mindset.
spent that money on something else.
And if we want to avoid it, we can just separate the properties and not worry about it at all.
I think that's the appropriate course of action
I like the transparency thing, just trying to keep
Okay.
things separate.
Do we have a motion?
Are we taking action
Are
or
we taking
thumbs up
action?
or
I guess
what do
we
we
are
doing?
taking
I do think it would be helpful for me to have a motion, just so that we were clear on the record as to why these things are being separated, because when the annexation request does come forward in November for the other piece, it'll just be good to explain, again, from a transparency perspective, there was a decision made here to bifurcate these properties.
I would make a motion that we annex these two properties separately.
I'll second.
Okay. Trustee Wing made the motion and trustee Kurtz made the second. Can we have a roll call vote on this?
Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
trustee Kurtz,
Yes.
trustee Hardy.
Yep.
Trustee Wing,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy.
Yes. All right.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I want to put on record that I was incorrect. I didn't want to bring it up during discussion. Administrator Kirk was correct about the future land use map designation. And I was incorrect. So I just want to put that on record that I made a mistake.
No problem.
Own it.
No worries.
So, I think we'll move on into reports right
Glad you
now,
did, 'cause
and
I was
we'll
like,
adjourn from exec session. Let's kick it off with trustee Ayers.
Town park opening was fun. Super busy. I wanted to slide down the slide because it looks really fun.
Some of us did.
Yeah. And kind of, actually, an aside on that is, I don't know how this would work but something to think about in the future is all of my friends who have kids that went and played at that beautiful park for the past week or so, now they're like, well, where's all the adult fun stuff in town? We have City Star and the gym. When can we get like an adult playground, like a Ninja Warrior playground or something for?
Pickleball.
It's too crowded. There's no space on the pickleball courts.
That's true.
That's only, it's halfway joking but halfway serious, right? It's to represent all of the population in the town, because you drop your kids off at the park, and then what do? You let them run around with the other kids, and then you sit there, or you go play on your own playground and tell them to get off.
Need a mobile bar.
Yeah,
Truck.
yeah, the little cycle bar cycle. The park was great. I had everyone who went and visited had great feedback. Nobody had anything bad to say. It was all wonderful comments. I'm looking forward to having the study session about the survey. I think that's going to be really helpful for everyone. I think I told you guys last time that I invited the port committee. I haven't heard back to see how many people are going to show up one way or another, but I think that's a really important discussion, especially based on some of the comments from the public today. I think that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Kurtz.
Yeah, my only report was just gonna be to, I guess echo what Trustee Ayers said. The new park is amazing. We've personally been there 5 times since it opened, 4 on the opening weekend. So my son certainly liked it. Loved it is probably an understatement. I did hear, so great, amazing feedback all around. I would say I heard one expression of concern, so I thought I would just voice it, and that somebody expressed concern about it's not the adaptive merry-go-round, but the one that's black, that's kind of above ground, going very, very fast. You know, I've seen kids on it. They seem to be self-controlling, but just would put that out there. I don't, it seems okay, but I did want to make sure that citizen's concern was heard in case anybody else has heard anything like that. It can get going pretty fast though, so I would say, kids just need to self-regulate, or parents need to be present. Other than that, I do not have any reports, so.
All right. Yeah. Trustee Albright.
We also had a lot of fun at Town Park. Even my teenagers had a blast and enjoyed that space. So seeing them grow up and still enjoy it, even though it's different, was really fun. And I appreciate town just really taking action with safety measures after some kind of flooding concerns came in just about, certain areas of it. But that's, you don't really know what the concerns are sometimes until it's in use. So, it's part of it. And I appreciate the fast action from staff on that. And then the only other thing I would just like an update on is our town signs at the entrances. I'm like, come on, like these things are so sad. Let's get a good entrance sign going on. So I just wanted to see how we're doing and timing, if we've got any updates.
We issued a purchase order, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks ago. They're hand painted, so I guess they're taking a little longer, but I think they're expected to go up in the next week or 2.
Oh, yay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
So we finally got through all the CDOT permitting processes, and that was a little bit of an effort, but
yeah,
we issued the purchase orders for those. And like I said, I hope it should be going up in a couple weeks.
Oh, I'm excited. It's going to be amazing.
It'll be a really nice change.
Yeah, awesome. Yay, that's good news. That's all I got.
Trustee Hardy.
Yeah, reiterate the park. It was fun. I convinced 2 other of our trustees, former trustee Mike and Brett here, to go do the slide with me. Because I didn't want to be the only big boy.
That was a bear to get up there, man.
It's tough to get on the top.
This heavy girth did make it to the top. I didn't have to knock any kids out of the way, but I did make it up there, and the slide is fast. It's good.
I did go later after you peer pressured me.
Did you go?
Yeah,
Okay.
I did.
All right.
Didn't you land on your butt when you came out the end? I thought I saw
It was so
that.
fast, I
It
hit right on my
shoots you, I
butt.
like to hold it.
Thought I was gonna throw my back out, but anyway. The padding was very nice and absorbent, and I didn't throw my back out as a result, so kudos on the back absorber. piggyback on the sign thing, it was brought to my attention that maybe an idea of something about bringing business downtown. Could we get some sort of wayfinding sign up by the Loves turnoff that says, hey, 5 miles down the road, there's City Star, there's XYZ
cool.
restaurant, there's coffee house, there's, you know, some more food and dining options. Just kind of something there that just kind of says, hey, come to our downtown. You see it when you drive into Loveland from the south end. When you go up there, there's a wayfinding sign that talks about downtown shops, downtown.
You're
this.
talking like a CDOT sign?
Yeah, we have to deal with CDOT, unfortunately. Or
That's what I was wondering, if you meant like like the kind of the blue CDOT
not
style signs.
not the old, not the boring
with like the,
CDOT.
you
No,
know,
I'm talking more like what
square
Loveland did for their wayfinding.
I'm not sure
If you're
They're like
driving,
purple and red and very creative
they're
looking.
actually brown, I thought.
I thought they were purple.
So driving, if you, next time you
I'll
drive
have
into
to
Loveland,
look at it.
right there by the
One of
ball
us is
fields
colorblind.
before it, you know, where it kind of comes back together.
Yep.
There's a wayfinding sign that talks about shops this way, this, you know, Chilson this way, and, you know, there's just some wayfinding. But having something like that with all that traffic at Love's,
So
seeing
one
if
of
we could
those-
maybe get them to come downtown for more options besides the 2 restaurants at Love's. And
One of those comprehensive plan action items, if you'll, as you go back and look, and this is consistent with the goals that you set for us for the next 12 to 18 months, is part of that comprehensive branding campaign was a wayfinding signage plan as well. So we would expect to do all that together, and it'd be great if they were all branded, right? If they all kind of had the same look and feel. We've got to do the branding piece first before we get into the rest of that, but I
So
think
we're
the
gonna have
short
that big
answer
long
is,
stretch.
you know, yeah, absolutely, we're gonna
it'd be kind of nice to try
hopefully
and
have a good way
market some business downtown from all that traffic out there.
Yep.
And then the only other thing I've got is, now that we've got this amazing Bustang stop out at the interstate, when are we gonna start having some sort of regular transport from our downtown to Bustang stop?
We've talked about a fixed route service, but that's,
Or even like an on-demand or
there's some
something?
real challenges to do that. And we were hoping that our micro grant, or microtransit grant would have been processed by the feds. We still haven't even gotten to application phase with them yet, even though they've kind of earmarked the money. It's just, anyway, it's like what you would imagine, trying to get through a federal grant process kind of might be.
Okay.
But our hope is that microtransit will be that connecting piece, because it can be more on demand rather than this kind of fixed route. You gotta show up at the bus stop at this moment in order to grab the bus. And, you know, we just, we have 1.5 bus drivers and we have 2 12-passenger buses. And the way that our current service is structured, they're pretty busy all day, driving mostly the same 30 people around. And so to peel them off and make a fixed route service with the vehicles and the drivers that we have would actually impact the existing service we provide. So we either have to expand, or we have to wait until microtransit comes along. And
Get an autonomous vehicle,
yeah, I mean,
a robot vehicle.
I think frankly, at some point, that's gonna be the reality. I don't know how soon that's gonna be, but, you know, autonomous shuttles are gonna replace most of transit, cause it's dramatically more efficient and cost effective. But anyway, that's maybe a bigger conversation for another day, but that will happen at some point,
Go
I
buy one of
think.
those self-driving Escalades from GM for
Yeah.
$125 grand.
Yeah.
All right.
That's it.
Trustee Wing?
Yeah, again, ditto on the park. It was great. Tom Murphy did send me a picture of the sign, and then I drove by and looked at it. And, you know, sorry if I was out of bounds by talking about what I saw there with the signs from a process standpoint. But I did see what looked like a 2-year-old climbing all the way on the top of those rocks. And the mother was probably 30 feet away. And there are some extremely sharp corners on those rocks. And for a child like that to fall and smack his head on a corner, I'm just concerned if we're covered legally and all our ducks in a row, fine. But boy, it just felt uncomfortable to me. So again, I don't know if we're gonna take any other steps or, and again, on the sign, I couldn't read it in your phone, but I looked at it and it said, kind of climb at your own risk. So if we're covered, we're covered.
I think that's generally the case. There's some debate about, you know, if you impose rules that say you shall not climb on the rocks, but then you have nobody there to monitor that,
Yeah.
that's not. So instead, it's kind of that, what we're concerned more about is the failure to warn, like, hey, these are you know, these are natural stone and they can be slippery when they're wet, so, you know, use caution and, you know,
Kids
watch
love
your
to
kids.
climb, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and
But I couldn't help but notice that.
we know that if we put up signs that say you shall not climb, they're gonna do it anyway, and so,
Okay.
yeah. But I
Again,
think,
we're-
but I think it's a great point.
We're covered, that's great.
I think we are. I
And
hope we
then-
are.
And then, you know, we keep talking about commercial, and I just wonder, reflecting on our discussion we had on that northwest corner of 287 and 56, do we ever go back and say, you know, maybe we should relook at that again? If you remember, the guy came and, you know, maybe we didn't love the percentage of commercial residential in the last, but is a dead issue, or do we ever go, maybe we should look at a little deeper next? I keep hearing us talk about wanting more of these things, and, you know, that's an empty prairie dog whole lot with weeds on it right now, and, you know, you talked about some of these lots, you know, years ago, we talked about developing, nothing happened, and, you know, are we okay if that looks like that in 10 years still? I'm just asking the question, if there's any precedent, or do we ever bring the guy back in, or does staff go and say, hey, you know, we were really close, but we needed you to tweak it just a little? I mean, what's the thought on that?
We have those conversations with developers. We wouldn't typically give them that kind of direction, in part because the plan they put forward was direction that they took from us in the first place that got declined, so that's a good example of why we don't typically give
Right.
them, you know, we try to limit how much influence we have over what their plan is, right? It's their plan, it's their money, we just wanna make sure it's consistent with the town's goals. And, you know, we made changes to the land use map that were approved by the town board, but, you know, to change the mix of land uses there, to try to feather some of that development out away from the rural residential properties. But yeah, so I think the short answer is, if they want to, we're always happy to have another pre-application meeting with them. We don't reach out to them
We
typically
don't,
afterwards.
okay, so there's no, hey, if you want to, there's nothing, no it's, so that as far as they know. And again, the reason
It depends on
I
the
think this
developer.
has a little gray to it is,
Mhm.
the town approved it, the planning commission approved, then we didn't. To me, that just adds a little bit, obviously it was subjective, there was different opinions on whether that should happen or not, so it's a dead issue unless they decide for
Unless
something.
they choose to bring it back.
Okay. And then the third thing, is next Tuesday our tour?
Yes, the plan is to meet here at 5:30, so we just kind of worked out all the bus availability. We'll use one of our BATS buses. I don't know, trustee Ayers, one question I had for you is, when you extended the invite to the port committee, did you extend the invite to the tour as well? Only
No,
because we have a limited
just to
number of
the-
seats.
just to
so-
the meeting.
Okay. Certainly they can come, but we just, you know, there's only 12 seats on the bus, so.
Is it open to the public?
It is officially open to the
Okay.
public. You know, we've done these tours in the past, and the only people that showed up were the newspaper, and that's
Totally.
fine. If too many show up, we're gonna have a hard time kind of getting.
October 1st, 5:30?
Yes, at 5:30, our goal is to do an hour-long driving tour and get back here, maybe a 55-minute driving tour, and get back here at 6:30 to have a study session to talk about it.
Is this where we're meeting?
We'll meet here at Town Hall.
As for my reports, again, I think, you know, the park turned out pretty amazing. I've been over there every other day with my kids. They're having a blast. Everyone I've talked to says it's phenomenal. Obviously, we've got a few tweaks and stuff, but I think overall, it's been a wild success. So kudos to staff for putting the work in. And then I'd just like to bring up, you know, the crossing repair by BNSF on Mountain. I think they did a decent job and stuff, and the way you guys have handled the whole situation with the rerouting of traffic and partnership with LCSO, I think it went really well. Especially having deputies out at the school on, you know, during the week, during the detour was really appreciated by, I think, everyone involved. So, yeah, I thought it went really well, and thanks to everyone involved. So that's all I've got.
Oh, homecoming
Legal?
parade's tomorrow. FYI, homecoming parade's tomorrow.
Yes, thank you.
6 o'clock, right? Am I
I think
missing
the
it?
parade's in the afternoon. Game is Friday.
It is 6.
Homecoming
Okay.
parade
Thank
at
you.
6 o'clock.
Thank you.
Parade's at 6?
It is, yeah, I feel like it's different time than normal.
Gotcha.
That's a football team.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
Football team is, only has one loss so far to Thompson Valley. It was pretty good. It was a close game.
How many wins?
3, 2, 3, I don't know.
A soccer
Play
team.
Coronado on Friday night is the game of the week, Denver Broncos game of the week, so there'll be, you can come and, see the Super Bowl trophies and do some other cool stuff, so.
Awesome.
Should be really, I think the game will be packed. Anyway. I'm not the football spokesperson, but my son is on the team, so that's why I know some of the details.
That's awesome.
Nothing else for me tonight. We'll just have some executive session discussion items.
Mhm. Legal side of things, do you have anything?
Nothing for me. Thank you
None
for having me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.
It's always nice to fill in.
Sergeant Williamson?
I would just like to try to get a number of people that were going to attend on the 5th for the open house, so we can make sure we have enough planned. So Trustee Wing and Trustee Ayers, okay, perfect. All right.
Is there a better time that I should show up, or?
8:30 is when we're going to get started, so a few minutes before that's fine. Just come to the front door and we'll get you where you need to be. We plan on being there for most of the day, and then whatever time is left, to come down and finish out with the Oktoberfest down here with my staff. So.
Yeah, sounds good.
No, thank you for putting that on along with LCSO. Like, getting to see what you guys do up there in Fort Collins is really great, sharing it with the community.
It's a great way for you guys to see all what you get to pay for every year when you write those checks. So.
No, much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Executive session?
Yep.
You may want to make a motion to extend to 10 o'clock as well.
Yeah.
I'll move to extend the meeting to 10 o'clock.
Trustee Ayers has moved
I'll
to
second.
extend to 10. Trustee Hardy is seconded. We have roll call.
Trustee Kurtz?
Yes.
Trustee Ayers?
Yes.
Trustee Hardy?
Yep.
Trustee Albrecht?
Yes.
Trustee Wing? Mayor Pro Tem Murphy?
Yes. Now, we'll move on to executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, 4EI, to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing a strategy for negotiation, and instructing negotiators. And the following details are provided: potential acquisition of properties.
Second that.
Thank you. Trustee Ayers is seconded. Roll call.
Trustee Wing?
Yes.
Trustee Hardy?
Yes.
Trustee Ayers?
Yes.
Trustee Albrecht?
Yes.
Trustee Kurtz?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy?
Yes. Thank you very much.